please to take your safety measures, to have face covering unless you're speaking, please. And when moving around, please keep a safe distance and also use the hand sanitizers at the hand stations. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Christopher Jackson on his chair over the last 2 years and over very trying times. And I congratulate Christopher on his appointment as Deputy Mayor. I'm now going to hand across to Maura to read the summons and to take the attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the Planning Committee, which is to take place today and physically in the Guildhall and conducted remotely as well via WebEx on Wednesday, the 9th of June. Councillor Jason Barr.
Yeah, can you record apologies for Councillor Barr?
Thank you. Councillor John Boyle.
Yeah, Councillor Boyle has a personal matter to attend and hopefully should be joining us before the session ends.
Thank you. Alderman Alan Breslin. Thank you. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
Here, Maura.
Thank you, Angela. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
And Shaw.
Alderman Darren Guy. Apologies, Chair.
Yeah, apologies, Darren Guy.
Councillor Christopher Jackson.
And Shaw.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Dan Kelly. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
He's on his way. Should be a few minutes, Maura.
Alderman Hilary McClintock.
Here, Maura.
Thank you, Hilary. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Councillor Philip McKinney.
Here, Maura.
Councillor Aileen Mellon.
Shaw.
Thank you, Aileen. And Councillor Sean Mooney.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, before I read out the statement of the remote meetings, it should be noted that this will be conducted as a hybrid meeting. Planning officers and those with speaking rights will be using the WebEx IT, and committee members, senior council officers are present in the Guildhall. I would like to remind everyone who is in remote attendance that this meeting will be broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel and will be available for viewing by the public and the media. The broadcast will also be available for repeat viewing at a later date. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with the Council protocol. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting, and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. In participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use of storage of the images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council website. I would also ask an assistance to help this meeting run smoothly. I would request that only members and officers use the chat box, and speakers should try and refrain from making comments on it. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? I have a declaration. It is LA 11-2018-0676, Claw Roundabout, Cluny Road. And I would ask the Deputy Chair to take over at that point. Thank you. Okay, Chair's business. I'd like to raise an issue concerning item 4. J2007 416F. I'd like to ask members to consider a site visit. I think that this is quite a complex application where we need to consider certain issues within the applicant. Maybe more, you could maybe speak on that, please.
Yes, Chair. I think given the complexity and the nature of the site, I would concur with your suggestion. Given you know, the environmental surroundings and the road network and the impact on residents. So I would say that members could benefit from a site visit, Chair, so, but it's a matter for yourself. Thank you.
I would definitely propose a site visit would be the appropriate action. Does anyone wish to make a comment on it?
Chair, happy to support that, Chair. Councillor Paul Gallar.
Sorry, I didn't hear that comment there. Councillor?
Councillor Paul Gallar. I'd be happy to support your proposal.
Thank you for that, Paul. Thank you. So we'll try and arrange the officers to arrange a site visit for that applicant. Thank you. Okay, members, we've quite a few withdrawals, so I am going to hand across to Maura to go through them with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you have already been notified. We sent this in advance. 2 applications I just want you to be aware of have been withdrawn from the system completely. One of those are on your agenda today, and that was Avish Road. That was item 1, and you will see in the correspondence in regard to that. So that application has been withdrawn from the system completely and won't be returning to the committee. We also just wanted you to be aware that an application, Northland Road application LA 11 2018 0611F has also been withdrawn from the system completely. So just wanted you to be aware of that in case members were wondering why it hadn't returned. So that's withdrawals from the system. Secondly, members, I just wanted to highlight information and correspondence regarding to other items on the schedule today. Item 2 is an application by the agent Desi O'Neill. We have received a late submission. You'll have seen that. That submission includes a P2 form. We require to re-advertise and re-notify in regards to that. We have a process that we have to carry out. Therefore, it would be important that I would have to remove that from the schedule in order to carry that out before members could make a decision on it. So unfortunately, we have to remove that from the schedule. So that's item 2. And then we have some correspondence and update in regard to item 5, which the chair is going to take. Thank you.
We received information from on item 5 from Matt Kennedy, who's had a bereavement in his family, so we'll not be taking item 5. I'd also like to offer condolences on behalf of the council and the planning committee. Thank you. Committee, I'm going to pass across to the for legal advice from Philip on item 4.
Yeah, members, just to remind members that this meeting of the Planning Committee is a meeting which is taking place so far as the members are concerned. Members must be physically present if they wish to participate in the meeting in any way today until such time as the new legislation comes in. So this meeting is so far as elected members are concerned, elected members must be present physically in the room in order to participate. Obviously members, just to clarify for the benefit of anybody that is online, that in respect of application 4 now that matter has been deferred and will not be proceeding at this meeting.
Members, I'm going to pass across to Maura, who wishes to speak on some further items of technical issues.
Thank you, Chair. Members, I just want to bring to your attention that we've had a request for a predetermination hearing, and it relates to an application L11-0318-0, which is an outline application, and it's located on the edge of Ballymagorty. In regards to that as well, I just wanted to discuss the potential prospect that there is an application adjoining this site which has similar issues. It's much larger scale, but it is potentially linked to that site as well. And I think it would be prudent for me to highlight that I would suggest that we would carry out a PDH for that as well, because it wouldn't make sense for members or officers to proceed with that application given the potential for a PDH on the other site. So I suppose my recommendation today is not only to accept the request for the PDH on that particular site by the EHA group, but also I'm recommending that we do a PDH for the application LA 11-2020-02520, which is an Apex Housing submission. So I just really wanted to get members' views on that. We normally bring the PDH requests into committee, and clearly members make a decision in regard to that recommendation. But in this instance, given the nature, the location and the complexities of the site, I think that the case would benefit from a detailed consideration, whether it be from a policy perspective, but also maybe from consultee perspective. So thank you, members. Thanks, Chair.
Right, Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Maura, for that. And without knowing the detail of the applications, I respect the view from the head of planning that around the complexities of the site. And one of the things that we're all familiar with without seeing a report and without knowing the details of the application, that the social housing need in parts of our city and district is a huge pressure, and we're all familiar with it. So if there is an opportunity for us to explore and have a better understanding of the application and do that through a PDH, we would be supportive of it, or I would be supportive of it. So on that basis, I'm happy to propose that we accept the offer of a PDH on those both applications.
Councillor Mooney.
Happy to second that proposal by Councillor Jackson.
Any objections? I'll take that as read. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one other update, members, in regard to a few outstanding matters. We've had a request from a member of the committee for an update on the Article 17 cases. Members will be aware that we have two applications that are presently with DFI planning. One is the Strabane Athletic application, which was notified to DFI on the 29th of March, and DFI issued an Article 17 holding direction to the Council on the 27th of April. It's just to make members aware we still have received no correspondence or update in regard to that from DFI at this stage. We've also got the application for Little, that was a LA 11-2019-0263F. That was presented to Planning Committee on the 6th of January. Members voted to approve. We notified of the members' decision to DFI on the 20th of January, and we did receive the 10th of February the correspondence in regards to the Article 17 direction. But again, there's been no further advice, no further information or update from DFI on that matter either. So both those applications are on hold until such times as we get some feedback. But I did discuss this with the chair, and he may want to come in regard to what potential suggestions he has in regards to that. Thank you.
Hilary, Alderman Clontarf, sorry.
Right, all right, Chair, and welcome to your new role. Thanks for that, Maura. And I'm just wondering, do we have to literally wait until DFI comes back? There's no time constraint on them at all? Or is there anything at all that we can do to move them forward?
Unfortunately, under legislation, there's no opportunity for us to stop the process of a holding for an Article 17, and there is no timeline with it. And this was raised before, I think, by Councillor Kelly. My only suggestion is that potentially the committee could write to DFI through the chair to raise concerns regarding the delay, and maybe just request an update in terms of how that particular process is progressing.
Aye, Chair, could I propose that we take that forward and write? Thank you.
Councillor Jackson, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I would agree with, I would second the proposal from Alderman McClintock, but I would add slightly to it, and we be more specific, and we write to the DFC or DFI Minister, because I know some of the correspondence that we've had from I think it given the frustrations that we're hearing within this chamber, and I think it's only right that we bring it to the attention of the minister, and that the fact that there's decisions that have been taken by this council that are being undermined by the lack of action from the DFI officials. So I would suggest that we write to the minister and bring this to her attention.
I would agree with your sentiments there, Councillor. Yeah, and I'm sure everybody here will agree with it. So I take it it's unanimous, yeah? Okay, thank you. Okay, just back to Maura again.
Apologies, just one more thing. We have also been asked for an update in regard to a current application that previously had been before committee, and it's an application in Drumahall. And I'm just going to ask Andre if she's on the line for her to give an update to the committee on that, please.
Yes, thank you, Maura. And through the chair, the application for Drumahall, it's A 2014-0035 RM. It's a residential housing development for 164 units in total. It is also associated site works, including amendment of levels, landscaping, wastewater pumping station and off-site roadworks at Drumahall Industrial Estate. So members, this is a complex application, which is EIA development. We have received an environmental statement and 4 environmental addendums to the application so far. The latest addendum was submitted in January 2021, and further information was submitted also by the agent at the end of March this year. There have been 37 letters of objection received during the processing of the application. To date, all consultation responses have been returned, and officers will endeavour to bring the application to committee for decision as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Andre. Right, now moving on to the running order. Sorry, does someone wish to speak? Sorry.
Sorry, Chair, I thought you'd finished Chair's business. I wanted to come in before you finished just to speak on one item.
Apologies, Councillor. Sorry, go ahead. Yes, certainly, sir.
Chair, it's in relation to the item that's withdrawn, the Appendix 1 on today's agenda. And I just, if you might give me a minute, I wanted to speak on it just because it's now completed effectively as it's been withdrawn. But you'll be aware this application has been in the system a long number of years. It's been presented to committee on a number of occasions, and I find it very unsatisfactory. And this is no reflection on the applicant that it's been withdrawn without an opportunity for us to maybe look at it, dissect it, and scrutinise some aspects of that particular case, because I think there are learnings to be had from it. And I think when you look at the case file and you look at the reports and you look at the way the application developed over from its validation to the point where it's withdrawn today, I think there's question marks around how it was being processed at council. There's a question mark around how it came to be the involvement of DFI strategic planning. It was a third-party objection, and the role that now has in terms of precedence around third-party objections. We have no transparency around that. There's no openness around that. We don't know anything about that process, how it was worked within DFI. We don't know why it was returned to us with the specific directions. They didn't seem to be aware that we had determined that application whenever they gave us those directions about this time last year. There's also question marks around the independent assessment of the case file. And in particular, there's a question mark around the author of it. There's some queries around whether, in fact, the person who authored that independent assessment is an unqualified undergraduate who was on placement with the firm who won that tender. And that's very concerning. And I think those, not just that, I mean, that's not confirmed, but I think in terms of assurance, we need to be in a position when tenders are going out that the correct people are doing them and that unqualified people are not hiding behind a big brand name who's won a particular contract. I think, you know, there's the process around, well, each of those issues in their own right would merit investigation, I think, and I think cumulatively there needs to be learnings, there needs to be assurance. We need to have make sure that the systems, checks and balances in place at council are robust, and that not just that the committee but the public generally have confidence in the systems that we employ in terms of making determinations. So for that reason, I would want to make a proposal, if you're content, that we would refer the case file to the internal auditor for examination, and that in due course he would report back to the committee with any findings or any recommendations that he would make in relation to that case file.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kelly. But what I would say is we'd like to bring in the legal and hear from him, because there has been problems with this week about this application. If you could maybe sort of just give us a brief outline, please, Philip, on why we sort of had to no, sorry, maybe item 1, yeah. Oh, right, sorry, I do apologise. Maura, could you maybe speak on this first for us to open it up to floor and make a decision?
I don't really have anything to comment in regard, you know, obviously the application from a planning perspective has gone through a process, and we followed due process as far as I'm concerned. And we obviously, you know, we had an Article 17 on that, which meant that officers couldn't issue the decision legislatively. We were not in a position to do so. And we took legal advice on this. We also took the advice of DFI, and we've obviously procured the services of an independent engineer, and obviously then we proceeded. So I wouldn't be able to comment on the pros and cons of an investigation into that. To be honest, it's not really my position to do so, unless Philip wants to comment.
Sorry, Chair, certainly there's absolutely no difficulty with referring the file on for consideration. The points that you made in relation to the capacity of the author of the report were not matters which I had previously been aware of, and certainly any information in relation to that would be appreciated and can be forwarded on to the internal auditor. So as matters in terms of that kind of procurement issue can be addressed in the future. There's no doubt about it. It was a very taxing application to deal with in a number of respects, and we're always keen to try and get learning from these matters where we can.
Thanks for raising that, Councillor Kelly. Yes, and I totally concur with what you're saying there. I do apologise, got a bit mixed up with two of the sort of messy ones that we're dealing with at the minute. Anybody have any comments on it? Councillor Maguire?
Sure, I'll just second it if that's needed.
Okay, yes, we'll go ahead with that. Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to pass across to. Sorry, sorry, I didn't see it.
Thanks, Chair. And Chair, I just, and apologies for coming in, but before you move off chairperson's business, I want to take this opportunity to wish you the best in the year ahead, and thank you for your kind words at the start of the meeting. Chair, as you'll know, I had anticipated that there would have been a special meeting of the planning committee late last month. So I didn't have the opportunity to put on the record my thanks for the support of the officer team and all those that are involved within the planning department who have supported me in the role as chair over the last 2 years, and also to acknowledge the support that I received from the deputy chair, Councillor Boyle, and his role in supporting me in the last year. And I just want to thank all committee members, everybody who participated in the planning committee particularly over the last year, as we became used to holding our meetings virtually. And I know it had been a challenge, and I suppose it's testament to us all that we avoided becoming a YouTube sensation, arguing about standing orders. So I just want to thank everybody I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for their support over the last year and their kind wishes, and I want to wish you the best in the role as chair in the year ahead. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jackson. I want to move on to the Maura wishes to speak about the late items. If you could just bear with us there, please.
Members, you'll have a pack in front of you in regard to the late items, and we just want to run through those to remind them really of what remains to be considered for this meeting. As you will be aware now, item 2 and item 4 won't be heard today. So what remains is item 6. We have a letter of support submitted by John Martin Road Haulage Association. We also have a letter of support from Gregory Campbell MP. In terms of item 7, we have a letter from Kieran Martin, agent. And in terms of item 8, we have an email and image from Mark Lusby, the applicant for that particular application. And I would suggest that the chair is going to give us an indication of how he wants to manage that in terms of time for the members to consider that information beforehand. I'll leave that with the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. Right, the running order for today will be 3, 6, 7 and 8. What I plan to do is I will give you time to read the late items before we actually start the planning applications, and I would say 10 minutes should be fair because there's not too many items really to look at. Are there any matters arising from the open minutes of the last month's planning committee? Okay, can we all take 10 minutes, please, to look at the late items, and then I will withdraw because the first item on the agenda is item 3, and I've declared an interest in that. Okay, members, have we all had time to look at the late items? Just before I depart, can I just remind speakers that the objectors and supporters of the applicant that will only have 5 minutes on each presentation to speak. Thank you.
Okay, members, we're on item 3, LA 11 2018/0676 full. And we'll go straight into the officer's report. And Sarah is taking it.
Thank you, Chair. Item 3 is LA 11 2018-0676/F. This is a proposed residential development consisting of 4 detached dwellings and associated works. The site is located at 12 Cluny Road off the Caw roundabout, and the recommendation is to refuse. Officers had previously included this application on the schedule for committee on the 6th of November 2019, 3rd of March 2021 and the 12th of April 21. However, in advance of these meetings, amended proposals were received and the application was deferred to enable officers to consider the proposals and to give objectors an opportunity to comment on the revisions. This is the site location plan and an aerial photograph of the site. The site is located within the development limits of the city on unzoned land and within the Derry Area Plan 2011. It is accessed from Cluny Road via Caw roundabout. Northeast of the site is Waterfoot Hotel. Northwest and south of the existing development of Waterfoot Park. Previous buildings on the site have been partially demolished with the outer external walls still remaining on site. A number of trees within the site and along the northern boundary were cut down since the application has been submitted. This is photographs showing the external walls from the previous building on site, and the trees in the distance are located on the boundary with Waterfoot Hotel. This is a photograph of the site taken at initial site visit, showing the remaining walls of the buildings on site, which has been partially demolished, and the existing property at the rear of the site in Waterfoot Park. Some of the mature trees on the northern boundary with Waterfoot Park have since been cut down. This is another photograph taken at initial site visit, showing the neighbouring property, number 158 Waterfoot Park, on the northern boundary of the site. The existing dwellings are at a lower level than the existing levels of the site. And this is a photograph showing existing property at 157 Waterfoot Park, which adjoins the site boundary. In terms of consultations, NI Water, Natural Environment Division, Environmental Health, Shared Environmental Services, Derry Water Management Unit and Regulation Unit, and DFA Rivers had no objection subject to conditions. DFA Roads have previously had no objection to the application, but following the latest revised proposals received in April, have now raised a number of safety concerns, and DFA now recommend refusal of the application. Throughout the processing of the application, there have been numerous layouts and amendments submitted. So this was the initial proposal, which was for 6 dwellings and 6 apartments, received in July 2018. At this time, the proposed dwellings had a back-to-back relationship with the dwellings in Waterfoot Park. This was the revised proposal received in January 2019, which at that time was for 5 dwellings and 6 apartments. This was the revised proposal submitted in July 2019, which relocated the apartment building, and at that time the proposal was amended to 5 dwellings and 6 apartments. and this was the scheme that was to be presented to committee in November 2019. This was the revised proposal received in November 2019. The house orientation changed and then backed on to Waterfoot Hotel, and the apartments were then removed from the proposal. This is the revised proposal received in July 2020, which then proposed 5 dwellings with a private drive and a soakaway. So this proposal removed 1 dwelling from the numbers proposed previously. This is the layout received in November 2020, which was for 5 dwellings. The soakaway was then removed and amended house types and elevations were received. This was the site layout received on the 2nd of March 2021, in which a further dwelling was then removed from the proposal, and the proposal then was for 4 dwellings. And this layout included a large retaining wall on the northern part of the site. This is the latest site layout, which is before members for a decision. This layout was received on the 12th of April 2021 and proposes 4 dwellings. As part of this layout, the retaining wall has now been removed from the proposal. There is a greater separation distance provided to the trees in the boundary. The carriageway has been reduced in width and the turning head reduced in width. And members should be aware that there are 2 trees located at the southeastern boundary, which are protected by a tree preservation order, which was confirmed on the 7th of December 2020. And these can be seen in the layout plan referenced as T1 and T2. In terms of representations, officers have considered all of the relevant material planning objections submitted on the application. As there have been a number of revised proposals, neighbours have been re-notified on numerous occasions during the processing of the application, and this resulted in a total of 251 objections being received in the course of the application. So to summarise the material planning issues raised, these related to character, design, layout, separation distances, density, form of development, overdevelopment of the site, impacts on trees being cut down within the site and trees under threat, amenity, overlooking, overshadowing, dominance, loss of light. There was objections on the shadow report analysis submitted, objections to privacy and the level differences, road safety, access and parking, impacts on natural habitats and bats, inaccuracies on the plans, contrary to PPS 7 addendum, DCAN 8 and creating places guidance. There was objections to works taking place on the trees within the grass verge, objections relating to air quality and noise, drainage and runoff into existing neighbouring gardens and the feasibility of the soakaway. There's been requests for a tree preservation order, objections to the parking arrangements and lack of visitor parking, sewerage, impacts of the retaining wall and unusable amenity space, and a detailed consideration of all the objections received during the processing of the application is set out in the report. So in terms of the policy consideration, this application has been assessed in accordance with the SPPS, the Derry Area Plan, PPS 7 Addendum, PPS 3, PPS 2 and PPS 15. So this is the latest layout which proposes 4 detached dwellings. These are orientated to have a front elevation onto the western boundary with an internal private drive and backing onto Waterfoot Hotel. This amended layout has removed a large retaining wall which ran across the northern portion of the site, which has addressed officers' previous concerns regarding the impact of the wall on neighbouring residential amenity. The nearest proposed dwelling to the existing dwellings in Waterfoot Park has a blank gable at ground floor and bathroom windows at first floor level to existing property 157 Waterfoot Park. The proposed dwelling on Site 1 has a finished floor level of 15.90, with the existing ground level on this plot being 14.66. So the dwelling on Site 1 will be 1.24 metres above the existing ground level. There is a finished floor level difference of 3.61 metres between Site 1 and the finished floor level of the closest existing residential property. The closest dwelling is located 11 metres from the common boundary and 16.6 metres to the nearest dwelling. And officers consider, despite there being a slight increase in levels from the plan submitted in March, that there is adequate separation distance between the existing and proposed properties so as to not adversely impact residential amenity as a result of dominance, overshadowing or loss of light. Members should note that the latest layout plan submitted and the previous elevations and floor plan drawings are not coterminous, and there are discrepancies on the measurements of the footprint of the dwellings from that shown on the block plan. No updated floor plans or elevations have been received from the agent. So this is a cross-section through the site showing the proximity of the proposed dwellings to the common boundary and the relationship to the existing properties at Waterfoot Park. This is a photograph of the site that was taken prior to some of the trees being cut down, but it gives an indication of the level difference between the site and the existing property at 158 Waterfoot Park. So in terms of the key policy issues, this proposal has been assessed against the Derry Area Plan policies ENV6 and ENV7. During the processing of the application, the developer removed a number of trees on site, and visits were carried out by officers, and a tree preservation order was confirmed on the 2 trees adjacent to the site boundary in December 2020. These trees are referred to as T1 and T2. So T1, and I can put up a photograph just to show you, that's the 2 trees that are protected by the tree preservation order on the right-hand side of the photograph. T1 is a 17-metre beech tree and T2 is an 18-metre horse chestnut, and these are located outside the site boundary but adjacent to the site. The closest dwellings proposed to these trees are located on plots 3 and 4. The amended plans received in April have moved the dwellings further away from the root protection area of the protected trees. The increased separation has addressed officers' previous concerns regarding overshadowing on future residents' amenity, but officers would in future have to resist requests to undertake works to the trees if future residents made requests to council because of issues such as height, light or shading issues. The ground level under the existing trees is being raised by 1 metre, which is likely to harm the TPO trees. No sections or information have been provided to demonstrate where this would occur, how it would be done, with any verification for an arboriculturist to verify the works would not harm the trees. 2-metre high fencing is proposed on the southern boundary, and close border fencing is proposed between the properties at the rear. No specific construction method statement verified by an arboriculturist has been submitted to demonstrate that the boundary treatments would not have a detrimental impact on the TPO trees. The information received from the agent in April included a further report from the applicant's arboriculturist. Council's planning tree officer considered the information and remains of the opinion that the application as proposed is likely to impact the health and vitality of the TPO trees T1 and T2 as a result of potential root damage. No credible evidence has been supplied to support the agent's assertions, which are set out in the supporting information received in May 2021. The proposal, therefore, is contrary to the area plan policies ENV6 and ENV7 and PPS7 in that it has not been demonstrated the proposal would not cause unacceptable harm to the tree preservation order, the tree's long-term retention, vitality, viability and visual amenity. So in terms of PPS3, access, movement and parking, this proposal will provide 2.4 by 45 metre splays at the access, and the existing footpath will be extended. The internal layout is to be a private drive and will not be adopted by DFI roads. Previously, DFI roads had no objections, but the latest plan submitted in April 2021 has reduced the internal road width from 6 metres to 4.8 metres and reduced the turning head from 20 metres to 15.8 metres. The reduced carriageway width is not sufficient to allow safe on-street parking for visitors to the site, and therefore has created a road safety concern for vehicles and non-motorised users within the site, which could lead to parking in Waterfoot Park. The turning head is not to required standard, and failure to provide sufficient turning facilities will impact on traffic progression and could lead to vehicles having to reverse out onto the public road. Based on the plan submitted, DFI roads therefore recommend refusal of the application under policies AMP2 and AMP7 of PPS3. So in summary, officers are of the opinion that the proposed development is contrary to the Derry Area Plan and PPS7, as has not been demonstrated the proposed development will not impact the future vitality and viability of trees protected by a tree preservation order adjacent to the application site. And the proposal is contrary to PPS3 and PPS7 in that the proposal would have permitted prejudice the safety and convenience of road users. As previously advised, there are discrepancies in the latest plan submitted and in its current form, if members were minded to approve the development, further plans would be required. So officer's recommendation at this time is to refuse permission, and there are 5 reasons for refusal set out in officer's report and also on the screen above. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. We have one speaker now, objector, Sandra MP.
No, thank you for having me. This is the 4th time this planning application has been listed. It's been deferred 3 times due to late submissions. The residents have consulted with Lee Kennedy for 3 years. We've employed an arboriculturist and we've consulted with an architect. We have educated ourselves in every aspect of planning. We invited councillors from most of the parties to visit the situation on the ground. Each expressed shock at the devastation to the trees and what was being proposed, especially on the north boundary, and the amenities of existing residents of 20 years standing. We concur with Council's 5 points of refusal, but we are a bit concerned that the 7 points of refusal laid out in April, none of the issues have been addressed. In fact, we feel they've worsened, and we're wondering why the amenities of the existing residents haven't been included this time as a reason for refusal. Site 1 has been moved yet again closer, higher and wider across the north boundary than even in April. When they were 19 metres away, they're now 16.6 metres away, and that will cause overshadowing and dominance. We are convinced of that fact. We refer you to Lee Kennedy's May report. Site 1 will be 24.90 metres on a north-facing slope. That's 82 feet high. How can there not be dominance and overshadowing? Their own property consultant stated from the outset, even bungalows on this site would be at a significantly higher level. And that's the crux. We agree with him because there used to be single-story outhouses and they were very dominant, but the trees broke the dominance. The trees are now gone. So why in 3 years have all attempts by residents to have Site 1 single-story, the original footprint, been rejected? Why would you increase the gradient and put 2-story, knowing the impact that's going to have on existing dwellings? Creating places state 20 metres minimum to be enhanced on a sloping site. There's no enhancement here. We have consistently requested a BR 209 shadow report, which would prove conclusively once and for all, for everybody concerned, if there's going to be overshadowing here. We will not accept computer-generated diagrams with no timelines or sun orientation. Quite frankly, we're fed up hearing there will be no overshadowing or dominance. Prove it to us. Prove it. A BR 209 should have been requested here from the very outset. It's never been produced in 3 years. The damage and devastation to the trees, we're talking 20+ trees, has been very well documented under the banner of retain and protect. All the trees, the few that remain, council have recommended them for retention, and their removal has been justified yet again to facilitate development. It's really a tragedy because it's been allowed to happen. All the trees that they said they would retain and protect have all been systematically cleared from the site. Council have consistently concurred with Lee Kennedy and the residents that this is a blatant overdevelopment of a very restricted site. It is not in character with the houses as you enter Waterford Park. It does not respect the levels nor the characteristics of the site. And finally, creating places state, develop, yes, but not at the expense nor to the detriment of existing residents. We cannot be collateral damage. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Sandra. Do we have any questions now to the objector? Aileen?
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Thank you, Sandra, for your comments to the committee today. I'm just wondering in terms of the shadowing issue for the residents now in terms of this application, how much of an issue that was already with it when the trees were in place? Did you have a lot of overshadowing, and do you see a difference with the trees gone? I know you're speaking in support of the trees that were there, but I just mean if the overshadowing is an issue when it comes to this development or this application, was it already an existing issue before?
That's a very good question, actually. The difference is with trees, you can top them if they're an issue. The problem with a gable wall extending 82 feet high, once it's built, it's built. You can't really top concrete, and that's the problem. The single-story outhouses that were there before, they were dominant, but the trees softened the dominance. So I can't imagine what two-story going up on a sloping site. It just seems crazy, and it has from the outset. And had single-story been considered from the outset, it would have removed a lot of the objections, and there are 251 of those objections. You know, people don't object for the thrill of it. They object because their amenities are being threatened. And if COVID and lockdown have taught us anything, it's that your amenities are sacrosanct. And people will do anything to protect their amenities. And it's, I suppose that's really all I can say. You know, maybe I've gone over there. Does that answer the question?
Jamal, happy enough?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Councillor Maguire, and thank you, Sandra. In terms of, Sandra has alluded to the number of times that this application has come, was presented to committee, and I know there had been, in recent times, the committee had voiced frustrations around the number of times there had been amendments to the application. And I know you've alluded to the work, the consultation that's taken place between the planning consultant and council officers. Has there been any communication with the applicant? And has the applicant done anything to alleviate the concerns that residents might have? Thank you.
Is that to me, Christopher?
Sorry, Sandra, that was for you.
Oh, sorry. No, actually, that's another very good question. In 3 years, there has not been one effort to engage with residents. And maybe if there had been engagement from the outset, it would have been so much different. It has taken a huge toll on residents over 3 years. I can't tell you how much this has impacted residents. And it's sort of been a classic in how to wear people down. But there again, when you're fighting for your amenities, you're not so easily worn down. But no, in answer to your question, Christopher, there has been no effort to engage. The only communication we've had is with council, in particular Sarah Barrett, who has handled this fantastically well from the start. She's been phenomenal, so we just wanted to mention that. She's treated it with, you know, intelligence and dignity from the start. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Sandra. Have we any other questions? No? Questions to the officer? Councillor Kelly.
Chair, can I just get clarification on the height that's being referenced? The roof height in the report here is referenced at 24.9 metres for site 1. Is that correct?
Yes, according to Lee Kennedy, yes. Sorry, Sarah. Is it not me?
That's okay. Through the chair, the ridge height from finished floor level of the dwelling in site 1 is actually 9 metres. So I don't know if that was a typo mistake in Mr. Lee Kennedy's report, but the ridge height of the dwelling will be 9 metres above finished floor level, and there's a level difference between the existing and proposed finished floor levels between the existing property at 157 of 3.61 metres. So overall, 12.61 metres is the overall height difference between the existing and proposed properties.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other? Okay, proposal in front of, sorry, Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, I was just going to say if there was no other speakers for the officer, I wish to make a proposal. I think it has been a very extensive process for all involved in the application, and we can see that the applicant themselves have tried to find alternative ways to produce something here, but within this application, there is a list of recommendations why, and no objectors have other reasons. But I think the overarching one for me is the PPS3, the road safety concerns. And alongside the other ones there, but it has a big factor in it. And for that reason, I would propose that we accept the officer's recommendation to refuse.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. I would be happy to second that recommendation, that we accept the officer's recommendation to refuse this application. Not only the 251 objections and the effect that this will have on the character of the whole Waterfoot Park, but there's discrepancies there. There's the to and froing and all about these trees. There's the privacy issues. They're all quite clearly stated in the officer's report. So I think that this would definitely be a case of dominance, and I don't think that this is an acceptable development in this area. So happy to second the recommendation that we refuse the application. Okay.
Proposed and seconded. All in favour?
Chair,
Unanimous. Councillor Dobbins, you want to comment? Vote's been taken. Okay, it's been unanimously refused. Sir, thank you. Back to Councillor McKinney. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Councillor Maguire. Can I just ask those that are on the virtual meeting, please, to, when they're actually speaking, to speak into their mic and also to keep their video up, please. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 6, LA 1120200486 and ask Rosie to take that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item 6 is an outline application for a new service station providing fuel, car wash facilities, a restaurant, shop, tourist facilities, toilets, ATM, amenity and picnic area, parking for cars, caravans and motorhomes, coaches and lorries, and associated access and landscaping on lands at Lismacarroll Roundabout, 150 metres east of 4 Lismacarroll Road and south of 20 Turbracken Road, outside Drumahall. And the application is before members this afternoon as the application falls within the category of major development, and the recommendation is to refuse permission. So the site is located in the countryside outside the settlement development limits of Derry City and Drumahall. The site is at present in agricultural use. It's generally flat with a rise towards the southern boundary, and the site boundaries are defined by hedging. Lands to the east and south are in agricultural use, and there's a number of dwellings to the north of the site at Gortica Road, and to the west of the site at Lismacarroll Park. And you'll note from this site location map that the dwellings at Lismacarroll Park are separated from the application site by the new A6 road. So the new A6 road is currently under construction. This is phase 1 of the delivery of the dual carriageway. And the roundabout here, Drumahall Junction, has already been constructed. From the site location map, you'll see just where the arrow is there. This is phase 2 of the A6, which continues to the north, but there's no committed funding for this section of the road as yet, and no date for commencement. So at present, traffic will come along the new A6, around the roundabout, and continue into the city and through Drumahall. This photograph then on the right just shows the application site at present, and you can see there just to the extreme right of the photo, the new A6 road under construction. This is the site layout provided with the application, showing the petrol pumps, the proposed building and car parking, and extensive landscaping is proposed around the site boundaries. This slide just sets out the plan and policy context, which is detailed in the report before members. And this slide sets out the material considerations under consideration of this application. So policy IC1 of IC15, sorry, of the planning strategy for rural Northern Ireland provides specifically for roadside service facilities on the trunk road network. And 3 main considerations under this policy are need, vehicular access, and location siting and design. So in respect of need, policy IC15 states that in normal circumstances, it's considered reasonable to expect a driver to travel at least 12 miles along the main traffic route network before reaching a petrol filling or service centre. And proposals for new facilities within 12 miles of existing services will therefore not normally be acceptable. So in respect of an indication of need, the planning report sets out the existing filling stations identified on the trunk road network, including the A2, A5 and A6, which all converge in the city of Derry. And the report also details the locations of several other local facilities. The policy test in respect of need for a proposed facility centres on a 12-mile separation between services along the main traffic network, and officers have considered the services available on the A6 at present and the distances to proposed service station of a similar scale and nature. So stated by the applicant, the nearest service station on the A6 is at Dungiven, approximately 16 miles from the application site. And after this is the Texaco service station on the Glensheen Road at the bottom of the Glensheen Pass, and this is approximately 26 miles from the application site. So when travelling from Belfast towards Derry, there's the service facilities, the Apple Green service facilities off the motorway when leaving Belfast, and then no other trunk road services until the bottom of the Glenshane Pass. So officers consider the respective distances between the roadside service facilities on the A6. The applicant has demonstrated that there's a need for the proposed facility. Officers acknowledge that the application proposes a comprehensive new facility for both private goods vehicles and HGV drivers, and officers attach weight to the argument presented by the applicant that the facilities available at existing filling stations do not provide the range of facilities proposed by this application. The proposal is located to cater for the needs of road users on one of the region's most important key transport corridors between the Northwest and Belfast. There are no service facilities on the A6 currently between Drumahall and Dungiven, as the service station at Claudy on the A6 was demolished to make way for the A6 dualling and is not being replaced. There is a distinction between petrol filling stations and service stations. The proposal is designed with all the services that long-distance travellers expect in a strategic roadside service facility, and they will benefit from being able to rest, shower, use the bathrooms, eat, have picnics and allow children to play, and allow parking for cars, HGVs, caravans and motorhomes. So on balance, officers consider that the proposal complies with policy IC15 in respect of need. In respect of retail impact, policy IC15 states that most petrol filling stations now provide a wide range of retail goods in the associated shop, but such shops should remain secondary to the use of the petrol filling station, and proposal for larger units providing general retailing are not considered appropriate. So when this application was initially submitted, the application did not provide information on the allocation of the floor area within the proposed building, and the floor area of the building exceeded 1,000 square metres, and it's located outside the settlement developments of the city. So the officers requested the submission of an assessment of retail impact in accordance with the SPPS. A retail assessment was submitted which sets out in more detail the floor area allocation within the building. So whilst the floor area of the proposed building exceeds 1,000 square metres at 1,800 square metres, the retail element of the proposal is limited to 245 square metres. So this is considered a modest retail floor area, which would not be likely to impact on the vitality or viability of existing centres within the settlement development limits. The remaining floor area is allocated to the provision of food, drink and seating and rest areas. And as set out in the report, the retail sale of hot foods is explicitly excluded from Class 1 retailing within the use classes order. So officers consider that the proposed shop element is compliant with policy IC15 and would remain secondary to the use as the petrol filling station or the roadside service facility. In respect of economic benefit, the applicant has set out that this proposal would provide approximately 80 construction jobs, 50 jobs when operational. It represents an investment of £7.2 million. It will provide contracts to local suppliers and provide rates income for the council of about £110,000, and officers have no reason to dispute these figures. In terms of traffic and access, policy requires that new access onto the public road should not prejudice road safety or significantly inconvenience the flow of traffic. DFI Roads has considered the proposed access arrangements and advises that the plans submitted lack the detail and dimension required to carry out a full assessment of the proposal, and in its current form would prejudice road safety. So this slide shows the proposed access arrangements. So the site is this is the access proposed into the site, and it's in close proximity to the Lismacarroll roundabout here, the Gortica Road here, and then we have a number of dwellings here that all have individual accesses onto the Turbracken Road. So access to the development requires a right-hand turn lane, and due to its proximity to the A6 junction requires capacity for queuing of vehicles turning right into the site. The slowing down and turning movements of vehicles entering and leaving the access is considered by DFI Roads to conflict with traffic movements at the junction, and in addition, adequate junction spacing between the proposed access and the existing junction opposite at Gortica Road has not been provided, leading to an unacceptable level of conflicting vehicular movements. In respect of, I just have some slides here showing that arrangement. So we have Gortica Road here and the access into the application site here. And this slide just shows the new Lismacarroll roundabout. In respect of transport impact, DFI Roads queries the information used to inform traffic generation and distribution figures, the traffic impact and junction modelling. So on the basis of the information received to date in respect of access to the public road, the proposal is considered contrary to policy AMP2 of PPS 3 and the SPPS in respect of transportation, and the application is recommended for refusal on this basis. In respect of car parking, or parking in general, there's 147 spaces shown for cars, lorries, coaches and motorhomes, and 6 cycle spaces provided, and it's considered that adequate parking can be provided within the site. In respect of location, siting and design, the site is within the countryside, and the applicant states that the proposed service must by its nature be located by the road it serves. The site is located as close as possible to the settlement development limits of the city, and the nature of the development, which includes movements of coaches, heavy goods vehicles around the clock, could not satisfactorily be located in a town or village with nearby residential properties. In respect of design and integration, as the application is for outline consent, detailed design drawings of the proposed building are not available. However, this is the indicative site layout, which shows the building. This is the petrol pumps and the building located in the northern part of the site with substantial parking then to the south of the site. So ground levels rise to the southeast of the site, and the intervening field boundaries, which are defined by hedging and trees, form a backdrop. So boundaries of the site are defined by hedgerows, which will be retained, and additional new planting with native species trees and hedgerows will be undertaken. So officers consider that a building of appropriate scale, which takes account of these landscape features, will integrate satisfactorily at this location. In respect of rural character, the site is in the countryside, and the site context has changed markedly with the construction of the new A6 dual carriageway. Taking account of the location of the site on the outskirts of the city, adjacent to the new A6 dual carriageway and the new park and ride facility, the provision of a filling station would not be considered incongruous at this location. So officers consider that the development would not cause detrimental change to or further erode the rural character of the area at this location. There were a number of other, so it's just the site at present, and back to the policy, the main considerations of the application. So at this stage now, these are the remaining issues to be considered. In respect of archaeology, it's noted that the site is located close to a number of recorded archaeological sites and monuments, including industrial heritage sites. So whilst there's no known archaeology on site, it's concluded there's a high potential for in situ archaeological remains, and groundworks are required to investigate further if there are archaeological remains. So Historic Environment Division recommends a programme of archaeological works. In respect of natural heritage interests, the impacts of the proposal on designated sites and other natural heritage interests have been considered by Natural Environment Division and Shared Environmental Services, and both are content subject to conditions. There be no likely significant effects from the development on any designated sites. There is a requirement to remove hedgerow, which does provide habitat for birds, which are protected under the Wildlife Order, but additional planting on site is considered by Natural Environment Division to be sufficient compensation for the loss of any existing hedgerows. It's unlikely, therefore, to be significant impact on protected or priority species and habitats, subject to a condition requiring landscaping. There's a requirement under the proposal to dispose of car wash effluent. It's proposed that the car wash effluent will pass through a car wash silt separator before discharging to the foul sewer. However, because of a downstream incapacity on the sewer on the Strabane road, the applicant proposes to collect car wash effluent in a sealed system for disposal off the site as liquid waste by a registered waste company, and NIEA Water Management Unit is content with this approach. In respect of foul sewage disposal, the applicant proposes to dispose of foul sewage to the Northern Ireland Water Sewer, but as advised, whilst there's capacity at the Culmore wastewater treatment plants, there is downstream incapacity on the sewer in the Strabane road. So the applicant therefore proposes a temporary private sewage treatment plant until any issues are resolved. Consultation with NIEA Regulation Unit note that former activities in the surrounding area may have caused the land to be affected by contamination. These included textile and dye works and mineral workings. A preliminary risk assessment identified no significant potential pollutant linkages. Therefore, the development is considered low risk to environmental receptors and human health. In respect of flood risk, given the area of hard standing within the site, a drainage assessment was required. NI Water advised that there's no public storm sewer available to serve the site, so the applicant proposes to address stormwater discharge by means of discharge to a watercourse and the provision of a sud system in the form of a pond, which is located just here in the northwestern part of the site. So the drainage assessment concludes that these attenuation measures will adequately mitigate flood risk to the proposed development and from the development elsewhere, and the development will not increase flood risk downstream. DFI Rivers have assessed the drainage assessment and are satisfied with its conclusions. In respect of residential amenities and the dwellings particularly located across the road on Turbracken Road, and there's other dwellings then at Lismacarroll Park, the proposal has the potential to impact detrimentally on these properties due to noise, odour and light pollution. It's noted, however, that there have been no objections received from these properties. In respect of noise, the main issues that were explored by environmental health related to car noise, engines starting and stopping, and the car wash. A noise impact assessment was submitted, and it demonstrates that the main noise source is going to be the A6 road. And in respect of the car wash, it will only be operational during daytime hours, and a 2-metre high acoustic bund is will be provided at this location. So environmental health has no objections in respect of noise subject to conditions. In respect of odour, because of the provision of hot food, a high-level odour control system is required, and environmental health would recommend a condition requiring further detail on the system to be installed. In respect of external lighting, drawings were provided indicating acceptable lighting levels across the site. So in respect of other amenity considerations, including overshadowing and overlooking, the site is considered a sufficient distance from the nearest residential properties so that an adverse impact does not arise. During the processing of the application, we received 6 letters of support, and there's 2 further letters of support which you have been provided with today, members, as late items. In summary, the issues raised at the facility would be the only such facility in the Northwest, and the Northwest lacks appropriate HGV and PCV rest and parking facilities, improved service provision for heavy goods vehicle drivers, including safe and secure and free parking and sharing facilities, provide a valuable resource for a significant number of commercial vehicles coming from Belfast, Larne and Belfast Port to the Northwest. There's economic benefits in terms of employment and investment. The development is of vital importance to the development of Derry, Londonderry as a tourist destination, and there's been support received from the motorhome and industry as well. We did, just the summary there's provided as well in respect of the late items provided. We did receive 1 objection. It queried whether or not an environmental impact assessment determination had been carried out. That assessment was carried out and is detailed in the report. An EIA was not required. So in conclusion, whilst there are existing petrol filling stations within 12 miles of the proposed facility, there are no roadside service stations within this distance along the A6 offering the range of facilities proposed under this application for the variety of traffic which the trunk road network uses. So officers consider that on balance a clear indication of need for this type of facility has been demonstrated. In respect of location, siting integration can be achieved and rural character is not adversely impacted, and the proposal has also demonstrated to be acceptable in terms of natural heritage, archaeology, flood risk, residential amenity and environmental considerations. However, as the proposed access is located in close proximity to a road junction where the slowing down and turning movements of vehicles entering and leaving the access would conflict with traffic movements at the junction, and adequate junction spacing between the proposed accesses and the existing junction opposite have not been provided, it has not been demonstrated that satisfactory access arrangements can be achieved. As satisfactory access arrangements have not been demonstrated, the application is, on balance, considered contrary to policies IC 15 of the Planning Strategy for Rural Northern Ireland and policy AMP2 of PPS 3. So refusal is therefore recommended for these reasons which are set out in the planning report. Thank you, members.
Thank you for that, Rosie. We have two speakers here on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Dizelle and Mr. Chambers. Mr. Dizelle, Mr. Chambers, you'd like to speak? You have 5 minutes to speak on the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak here today and answer any questions. I am David Dalzell, Chartered Landscape Architect and Planning Consultant and the agent for this application. I'm accompanied by the applicant, Gordon Chambers, and our roads engineer, Martin Hoy, is available to answer any questions on roads matters. In terms of location, our site's located where the A6 dualling is currently coming into Drumahall at Lismacar roundabout. Phase 1 of the dual carriageway is due for completion spring 2022, and a park and ride has been completed on the opposite side of the roundabout. Phase 2 of the dualling will see the A6 extended to the A2 at Strabane in Gramsham. We have identified a clear need for a service station offering a broad range of services for the benefit of all users of the A6. There will be parking and fueling facilities, including for HGVs and electric cars, but this is much more than a petrol filling station. This will be a £7.2 million scheme with convenience shop, hot food, extended hours of operation, truck and coach parking, welfare facilities for drivers to wash, change and rest and refresh. And this is critical for road safety. There'll be tourist information and motorhome and caravan service points. This proposal will not detract from existing businesses, which will still be required to service the local need. Employment will be created during construction and longer term in the operational phase. Through the planning process, before making this planning application for outline planning permission, we went through a PAD process and we held a community consultation in January 2020. And there was a strong turnout and an encouraging response from local people. Since then, we have received letters of support from the Motorhome Campaign Group, Campra, the Bus and Coach NI organisation, Airporter, Manufacturing NI, Leonard Curry's local 24-hour vehicle recovery business, Logistics NI, which is the Freight Transport Association, and the Road Haulage Association. And we've also received a letter of support from Gregory Campbell MP. Progress to date, there's been a lengthy consultation process with applications such as this is normal, and this has recently been completed. And we understand that this takes time, and we have agreed to all extensions of time that the Council Planning Office has required for the environmental determination. The planning officers have only recently been able to do the determination, but an environmental statement is not required, and that was determined in 10th May 2021. And this confirms that environmental impacts of the development are not likely to be significant. And this has been a crucial step on the way. The recommendation to Council and the report was only released last Thursday, but importantly, it concludes that a clear indication of need for this type of facility has been demonstrated, and the proposal complies with the relevant overarching planning policies. In terms of access, this is the only issue remaining, and we did have to satisfy the planning principles first before we could get down to the nitty-gritty of roads and access, and that's not uncommon. Our roads engineer has been working on an access solution that I'm confident will be acceptable to DFI roads. Until now, we haven't been able to engage in with roads further, but now the overarching acceptability of the scheme in terms of planning policy has been confirmed. We would ask the Council, through the planners, to allow us sufficient time to move to the next stage and agree the access arrangements with DFI roads. I'd just like to point out that there was one typo in the Professional Planning Officer's report, page 16, where it said that the, if I can just find it here, the principal consideration has been demonstration of need. As set out in the officers consider that need has not been clearly demonstrated. I think that should say need has been clearly demonstrated. That's something that perhaps can be clarified. But otherwise, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And if you have any questions for myself or the applicant, or indeed a roads engineer, we're more than welcome to hear them. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report. I suppose my question is in relation to the information that's been requested by DFA Roads. I know in our report, we were told that the information had been requested on the 30th of November, and it was again requested in January. And I'm almost certain that I picked you up that you've told me that the access solution is being worked on as we speak, and what you're requesting is that we allow more time, they allow for that information to be submitted. I just want a wee bit of clarity in relation to that, that the solution is still being it's still being sought out and it's still being worked on. And I just want to be sure that I'm hearing you right. And could you elaborate a wee bit further on it? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Lizelle, would you like to come in on, or would you like to bring Mr. Hoey in, the technical advisor?
I can answer that, Chair. Thank you. Yes, whenever we received the DFI Roads consultation response, we had a meeting with Roads and planners on that, and we discussed the concerns that Roads had. But the overarching feedback from that meeting, from the planners meeting, was that there was perhaps a way to travel there in terms of the planning principle before we got down to the nitty-gritty of the roads. And really the direction we had then was that there was more information that the planning officers required before the discussion could move to the technical matters of roads. And those were issues in terms of the makeup of the floor space, retail impact, and so on. So we haven't been sitting on our hands. We submitted that information, the retail impacts statement, floor space, floor plans, and so on. So that's been under consideration in the interim, as has the environmental determination, and there's been additional information that's been submitted with regards to that, and that's a conclusion. So to go back to that meeting where the planning principle had to be satisfied first, that's where we see we are now. So therefore, we're moving now to the technical issue, and we have been working on the roads issues in the meantime. So what we would like to do now is to have the opportunity to present alternative access arrangements, which we would hopefully be able to agree with Road Service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lizelle. Alderman McClintock.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Mr. Dalzell. My question was actually going to be in very similar lines because, I mean, this is quite a very exciting proposition that you're putting forward. But I also was just wondering, because the sound had gone just ever so slightly, just whether there was still room to work with DFI on the roads issues. And I think what you're saying is basically that you were trying to get over all the other hurdles first, and there's still a way to go in this. And I suppose as this is an outline planning application, I suppose it's not really a question, I think, because you have answered it to Councillor Jackson, that you're still prepared to work with DFI to find a solution to what is basically the only remaining issue for this application. I think I'm right in that, Mr. Dalzell.
That's correct. Absolutely. No, we're more than willing to engage, and as indeed, and I can't speak for DFI Roads, but at that meeting, DFI Roads did indicate too that they were willing to engage, as they usually are in terms of sort of technical matters and geometry. But the point they made at the meeting too was that they needed the steer from the planning officers before they committed the time and the energy and the resources to dealing with, in their view, what could have been alternative access arrangements, which is the planning case hadn't been proven. That could ultimately have been pointless work for them, I suppose. So that's how we left it. Let's get over the planning principle first, and then hopefully the way is open then to negotiate the access and the technical matters in terms of that.
Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on getting the chair. I was late. Just from listening to the responses, you know, one of the most important factors here that we're looking at is safety of road users. And there has been a lot of work done on this application around providing evidence of need and going through the whole act of potential waste disposal. And a lot of work seems to have done on the back end. And and possibly not the front end, where there's probably a lot more is needed. That when we talk about, being willing to work with road service, it's not enough in the sense of we need to be ensuring road safety, and that hasn't as yet been proven in this application, and might not be proven in this application, at a later date. So I'm not sure that the responses have qualified some of the questions that have been asked.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gallagher. Is there any more members wish to speak? Okay, Councillor Millie.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, I didn't really get a lot of information from the replies about the engagement with DFA roads so far. I mean, could you possibly provide us with more information as to any previous engagement, and probably more importantly, the future engagement that you will have with road service? I can understand Councillor Gallagher's concerns, but we would need probably a bit more information as to where it's going with the road safety aspect, and possibly what type of time frame would you need to possibly assuage our concerns about the road safety aspect. But if you could address us on that point, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Dizelle.
Thank you. Yes. Whenever we received the road service consultation, we requested a meeting with planning officers and road service, and at that time, as I say, we discussed the issues regarding road services concerns, and to go back to the point about sort of the front end and the back end. I suppose you might say that the planning principle was considered by the planning officers to be the front end, because the discussion at the meeting went so far with the roads issues, but couldn't go no farther until the planning principle. So the direction we were given at the meeting was that the planning principle had to be agreed first. We really only have got to that point in the last week. So from our point, so we have our roads engineer who's been working on solutions there. We are not asking the committee to make a decision on this today. What we're asking is for the opportunity to take this to the next stage with alternative access proposals, which we hope would be satisfactory to DFI roads. We intend to submit those very soon, and engage and provide whatever information the road service require through the process to bring this to hopefully a rapid conclusion. Because there's many issues with an application of this size and nature, and a lot of ground to travel, which has been gone to date, but as I say, only in the last week. So it hasn't given us an opportunity to submit anything in advance of this meeting. This is the first committee meeting that this application has been before. So we would ask the committee's grace to give us that scope to negotiate further with the officers and the FI roads.
Councillor McGuire.
Okay, yeah. Chair, just seems to be a wee bit of clarity needed on what the proposal is from what the speaker has said there. But for me, it's, one lorry could back the whole thing up out onto the A6, is from what I can see. And, this, if you take the, I can't remember what you call it, but them stops out on the motorway, they have a good long drive-in where you can go in and nearly go around slip road. You can nearly go around a mile to get past where there is nothing, and it's not. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's dangerous, but to me, it hasn't been proved safe enough as yet. So that's where I'd be coming from on it, Chair.
Mr. Dizelle, if you're going to reply to this, could you maybe possibly speak up a bit better and speak in your mic? We're finding it very difficult to hear you.
Could I intervene a second? Can you hear me there?
Yeah, is that Mr. Hoy?
Yeah. No, it's actually
Yes,
Gordon Chambers. Gordon Chambers.
Okay, go ahead, Gordon.
I'm the applicant. It's very hard to tell by looking at the design, the access to the road. We are perfectly willing and happy. I mean, I own the land where the site is going, plus the field behind. Should it mean that we have to move the project towards the Belfast side to give a greater area for access, I'm very happy to do that and very happy to work with the DFI. As far as the traffic coming down to the to Bracken Road to the roundabout, they will be slowing down close to the roundabout anyway. So we're very happy when the vehicles come in. There's a one-way system that takes it right around the back. It's a very long, drawn-out process, so there won't be any problems with the lorries being held up. You know, once a vehicle comes in, there's full access around. There won't be any stopping. But most importantly, we are more than happy to adjust, change the layouts, whatever the DFI requires. Very happy to do that and take the advice, of course. That's all I wanted to say. It's about, well, other than the fact that it's a huge prospect for the city, and it's going to help tourism. It's the first thing you see leaving the city, the last thing you see coming from Belfast. I think it's going to be really a great project for us all.
I have a question for you, actually. Have you got a timeline to sort the issues out with the DFI?
That's where David comes in. He's going to try and negotiate all the time. We're very happy to meet with them at any time. And Martin, our expert, he's on call now. I'll let Martin take over now. Thank you.
Thanks. Through the chair, just some clarifications. The client has engaged Lloyd Orman now to look at a solution for an access, and that is something that we have engaged in. Now, safety is paramount, and the access above all has to be safe. The capacity at the junction is a given. It's a brand new strategic roundabout, so we have no concerns that the actual junction has the capacity. Now, in terms of timescale, it's a difficult one because something like this that requires an access of a brand new piece of strategic infrastructure will take time to engage with DFI roads, and it's more so the timescale for DFI roads to come back with comments to allow us to move forward. That will be the defining factor. So I think it would be remiss to say that this could be wrapped up, in a period of time. I think initially we need time to engage with senior directors within roads on the principle.
Any more questions from the floor? Can I ask Rosie to sum up, please? Any questions for her? Oh, sorry, I apologise, Hilary. Go ahead.
Chair, before I get to my question, Rosie, if I can, I just think this is such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for the city. We don't have a facility of this nature. It ticks all the boxes other than at the moment than this one about the access, which obviously is crucially important, but it gives us all the things that we need as a second city, to increase our whole tourism, to put £7.2 million into the local economy and all that. And I find it incredulous that DFI, who have already invested, I might be wrong in my figure, something like £500 million in the road infrastructure, the whole A6, that there isn't a solution so far with them as to how this could move forward, because this seems to be the only sticking point on it, Rosie. And I suppose what I'm asking, what my question is, rather than making it sound like a proposal at the moment, is that because this is an outline application, does that give any scope for within that, the basis that it is an outline proposal, that we can move forward on the basis that the roads issues are sorted out? I'm thinking just of Mr. Chambers saying that he owns the land adjacent to it, and that he could obviously work to whatever requirement the DFI needed. So I suppose basically my question is, this is an outline application, and does that give us any scope at the moment? Thank you.
Members, I think Maura wants to come in on this. I'll let you in next time, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take that, Councillor McClintock. Given the nature of the concerns and the technical requirements that need to be resolved, I don't think it's something we could do by way of condition if that's the type of question you're asking, because it's an outline. However, what I would suggest, given the conversation thus far, members could consider deferring the application for a number of months that we deem reasonable to allow for the technical aspects of this to be resolved. Clearly, there are a number of things that are concerning members as we're officers, and it's outlined that the principle of this was what the applicant had been endeavouring to resolve up to this point. So from the technical perspective, I do think we can't run with it by way of an outline and conditions. However, I would suggest if members are in that mind, then it would be much better, to put a timeline on that engagement, because clearly, we want to really bring this back. And if it wasn't resolved within a certain time period, we've done this before, that members would ask officers to return the application then to the committee. And in my experience, these types of issues, which quite rightly the agent has outlined and the technical agent has outlined, needs not just local roads engineers, but the strategic network roads engineers to resolve. So there's a bit of, a bit more to it than just a visibility display. So I would imagine that, we're talking months here, members, rather than maybe 1 or 2 months. Maybe, you're talking 4 months or 6 months, maybe. But it's a matter for yourselves. But that's just a suggestion, Chair, for the floor.
Chair, could I come back in? Would that be all right? Just as a subsidiary to that. Could I propose that we do have a deferral? But what my concern is that we know how slow DFI work. Let's be truthful about it. And I wouldn't like to see this put off, for a long time, because obviously there are economic benefits, both for the whole region and getting this moved forward. But at the same time, I think we're not going to solve the issues today. So a deferral does seem reasonable. But so can I formally propose that? And I don't know what sort of a timescale we need on it. I mean, I'd be happy to take advice on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman McClintock, but Councillor Jackson wishes to speak on the matter. If we could just hold, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, no, thank you. And I suppose in the same vein as Alderman McClintock, I was going to come on and suggest a deferral, because whilst I agree with a lot of been said around the excitement and the necessity of associated infrastructure along with the A6, and I welcome the progress in relation to some of the planning issues that have been highlighted in the report. I don't agree that the access is nitty-gritty. I agree that it's a fundamental principle of the development as a whole, and it was disappointing to see that those issues hadn't been addressed before coming to committee. So I would be keen to see those issues being ironed out, and they allow a deferral to give the applicant and the EFI the space to work on a solution, and hopefully to bring forward and bring this exciting project to fruition. So in terms of the advice from the head of planning, I would be content to second the proposal for a deferral and suggest a period of 6 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jackson. I already had a seconder, which was Councillor Mooney. Thank you, anyhow. So the proposal is from Alderman McClintock, seconded by Councillor Mooney, that we defer this application for 6 months. All in favour, or anyone against? Okay, motions through. Thank you. Members, we normally take a break around 4 o'clock. It's 10:02 now. Can I suggest we take a 20-minute recess? Thank you. If we could all be back in for about 10 past. Okay, members, we're going to start again. We're going to deal now with item 7, LA 11-2020-0726A, and Malachy is going to take us through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is item 7. It's for the retention of one number 3 metre by 1.5 metre PVC board with applied vinyl lettering and graphics on support posts behind boundary fence, and one number 2.4 by 1.2 metre PVC board with applied vinyl lettering and graphics fixed to boundary fence. And the location is 35 Railway Street, Strabane, and the recommendation is to refuse.
Chair.
Yeah, just hold on a second there, please, Malachy. Councillor McGuire wants to come in.
Yeah, Chair, just before you go into that, I got a phone call today from the objector's son. I told him I was on the planning committee twice, and I hung up the phone, and he also sent me a text message, so I never made any comments, so I would like a bit of guidance on that, Chair.
Would you like to come in on that, please?
I mean, Chair, obviously it's outside of the control of any member. If they get contacted, the correct approach has been taken by the refusal to engage in relation to the matter and to refer them on elsewhere. So as I think you've acted appropriately and can continue to consider this application.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted it on record, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor McGuire. Can you want to carry on now, Malachy? Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chair. As you'll see in this slide is the site location. It's at a corner location at Park Road, Railway Street. It's within the town centre of Strabane. As you'll see in the overhead ortho graphic here, we have a sort of mixture of uses in the area. It's predominantly residential, predominantly commercial with a number of residential uses as well. So the relevant planning policy consideration for the application is the Strabane Area Plan, SPPS, and Planning Policy 17, Control of Outdoor Advertisements, and Planning Policy 3, Access, Movement and Parking. As described in at the outset, that this is a retention application, so the photographs here show the situation on the ground, and these are in line with the submitted plans. So we have 2 signs with the freestanding sign, larger sign here for McHugh Oils, and we have the other sign for Packwork Motors. Just move on to the next slide. As you'll see, the elevations are in line with the actual situation on the ground. In terms of the site context, again, just to give a bit more detail on that, the property to the immediately to the south, east of the application site is a residential property, and you would have McDonald's proposal to the north and northwest. The site itself is currently used for storage of fuels and materials associated with one of the Signage companies. It was McHugh's. The actual sale of the coals and fuels, etc., are further down Railway Street, as shown on the attached map. And the other sign is for Pack-Kirk, and they've relocated to another area of Strabane, again shown on the attached map here. On all applications for signage, we would consult DFA roads in order to assess the impact on public safety. DFA roads have no objection to approval being granted, subject to the standard conditions and informatives. SPPS sets out, the regional objectives in terms of planning, policy, and management and the control of advertising, and they acknowledge that it can contribute to a vibrant and competitive economy, but it also can affect the character and appearance of a building or a wider area where they're displayed. Therefore, given the potential impact of outdoor advertising on amenity, both positive and negative, there's a need to balance the requirements of the industry with protection and, where possible, enhancement and appearance of our cities, towns and villages. So the regional operational policy will be contained within PPS 17, and that's planning policy AD1. which sets out that there's two real considerations and considered applications for advertising. Those are that it respects amenity when assessed in the context of the general characteristics of locality, and it does not prejudice public safety. As alluded to in the earlier slide, we have consulted road service, DFA, and we do not believe there's any issues in respect of point 2 within policy 81. Therefore, our consideration is really in respect of point 1 in terms of amenity and the impact of the two signs on the general characteristics of the locality. So there's a number of factors set out in 81 that planning officers are asked to take into account in terms of impacts of signage. They relate to the size, the scale, design, and materials, and potential effect of the characteristics of the area. We also look at, in particular importance of this application, we look at the issue of amenity and clutter and cumulative effect of signage. So yes, the application is within Strabane Town Centre, and there are a number of commercial businesses which have signs at the minute, and this is acknowledged in the planning report and is considered in terms of the evidence submitted by the applicant. The two signs proposed are not associated with the site. However, we have to assess them on a visual basis. The proposed site is currently used for storage with a palisade fence surrounding it, with a residential property immediately adjacent. It is the opinion of officers that the scale and location for the proposal for the retention of these things does not meet the policy test in PPS 17. They would set a precedent, for further signs at the location, and they are not in a general conformity with the other signs that are generally located within that area of Railway Road, which are associated with businesses within their premises or in the buildings, and are considered an overall offer of the commercial businesses. So this sort of sets out our issues in terms of cumulative impact and clutter. We believe the sign does not contribute positively to the site and is unduly prominent. The cumulative effect of proposal, when read with all our advertisements along the street, has a negative visual impact and creates clutter along Railway Street, but particularly at this location within Railway Street and at the junction of Park Road. The business involved will be of no detriment, and as they already have adequate advertisements at the location of their businesses to indicate their presence and advertise their products. Furthermore, the approval proposal will set a precedent for all our businesses further within Strabane Town Centre to use this location or all our similar locations for similar types of proposals. Therefore, in summary, we do not believe that the proposal meets the 81.1 of the plan and policy. We've also received one letter of objection. That's from the owner occupier of number 33 Railway Street. The issues raised are summarised below. They believe that this part of the Railway Street is residential in nature, and the existing use of the site already detracts from the visual amenity of the neighbourhood, and the advertisements are not appropriate at this location. It's unacceptable design and scale. The advertisements associated with our businesses, such as McDonald's, are not comparable to that with this application. There's no history of signage at the site, and the applicant not willing to engage with the objector in discussing proposed use of land. Sign is misleading due to no sales at the site and not necessary given the business is elsewhere. It's unsightly and not in keeping with strategic public realms investment enhancing the town centre proposed ongoing in the Railway Street area. And then issues with the retrospective nature of the application, and again, our issues about the current use of the site. As detailed in our report, we do have issues with the scale and design and the location, and the effect on the amenity of this area. The use of the site has approval and cannot be, it's not a material consideration through this advertisement consent application. And again, in relation to the public realm works, all applications for development consent or advertisement consent will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. including potential impact on the area. So in summary, it is our opinion that the application will result in clutter and when it's considered in accumulation with other signage in the area, and also the potential for further clutter at this exact location, and therefore it fails to meet 81 of PPS 17. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kieran, for that presentation. We have two speakers, Mr. Oliver Teague on behalf of the objectors and Mr. Kieran Martin on behalf of the applicant. Can I ask Mr. Teague, please, to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my name is Oliver, and I'm a son of the objector, Charles Tighe, and I'm speaking on his behalf. Our family home adjoins the site in question. I refer to the correspondence of Kieran Martin dated the 15th of February 2021 and say as follows. Number one, I strongly disagree with his contention that the signage respects our home. It does not, and given the ugly nature of the sign, it is not tenable to say otherwise. The signage is unsightly and materially detracts from the visual amenity of our family home. Number two, that part of Railway Street where the signage is located is in a semi-residential area in the vicinity of Park Road and Eden Terrace. The storage of the LPGs detracts from the visual amenity of the neighbourhood. The signage exacerbates this. This type of development, including the signage, is more suited to an out-of-town type site. Number three, the signage cannot be considered modest in scale in view of its purpose. The signage obscures a significant area of our gable wall. It is also in immediate proximity to our home. Number four, the site does not have a history of signage. My family have resided at the family home going back over 70 years. Signage has only been used in recent years and only then after consultation with my family. Regrettably, this has not occurred in this case. Indeed, the applicant has taken a very belligerent approach to date and has refused to engage with us at all as to his use of the site. Number five, the purpose of the site is to advertise the applicant's business elsewhere in the town. The proper location of the signage is at the applicant's own premises. Therefore, the signage cannot be considered necessary for the applicant's current storage use of the site. The correct application here would have been a change of use application as opposed to signage retention. Number six, part of the existing signage includes a sign placed by Pat Kirk cars, giving information on the new location of that business. Pat Kirk never traded from the site, but did use it to store cars and has moved from the area about 3 years ago. Therefore, there is no longer a requirement for the sign to remain next to our home. Number seven, Railway Street is one of the main access routes to our town centre. The unsightly appearance of the LPGs and the signage on the site and the resulting increased traffic congestion runs counter to ongoing efforts of the council and local traders to entice shoppers to the town centre from the Pavilion Retail Park. Number eight, the erection of the signage and the retrospective efforts to obtain an approval thereafter by the applicant are consistent with the conduct of the applicant as regards his use of the site since he took occupation of it 2 years ago. For example, the applicant commenced using the site for the storage of dangerous and explosive products and thereafter sought retrospective approval from the council. He has had a total disregard for neighbouring residents, including ourselves. This behaviour should not be accepted by the council as it undermines the purpose of the planning laws we have in place. Number nine, the council will be aware that there is an ongoing enforcement case. The application should, at the very least, be put on hold until the council completes this case, and the applicant should be ordered to remove the offending signage in the meantime. Number 10, let me say that the continued use of the site for the storage of an explosive substance, namely LPGs, continues to have a negative impact on the health and well-being of my parents. This ongoing, unacceptable fire and explosive hazard is causing grave distress and anguish to our family. This nightmare is now been going on for a couple of years, and as a family, we are disappointed at the slow pace at which the matter has been dealt with by both the council and planning services. I'd be grateful if you could take all necessary steps to remove the signage and also ensure the immediate removal of the LPGs from the site and the vicinity of our family home. You will appreciate that as this matter concerns my family's health and safety, we have no option but to continue to press the council until this is done. Number 11, and finally, I also referred to the letter from Kieran Martin dated the 13th of April 2021. He makes reference to 3 other premises in the town with signs that have no connection with the site on which they are placed. However, these signs are on commercial buildings, not residential, presumably with consent and commercial agreement of the owners of those respective buildings. Therefore, these are not analogous to the current application. I would ask that you refuse the application for this eyesore at our family home. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, sir, for that. Is there any questions for the objectors? Okay, can we have the agent, please?
Hello, good afternoon.
Mr. Martin, Kieran Martin?
Yeah, that's correct.
Go ahead, sir.
Right. Yes, my name is Kieran Martin. I'm the agent on behalf of the
Sir, we
applicant.
can't hear you. Could you speak up, please?
I can, surely. I am the architect or the agent in relation to this application. And if I've submitted a supporting statement to the planning
Sir,
office.
it's very difficult to hear you. Could you maybe speak
right.
closer to the mic? Thank you.
I will do. Is that any better? Hello?
Not much, sir, to be honest.
Not sure just what's wrong with the microphone then. I've referred to a submission to the Planning Council Committee. Within, I have outlined some reason why the application should be approved. Namely, historically, there has been signage on the fence at the site for a long number of years, going back to 2009. I've submitted some Google images to that effect, which the council have in their pack there. The railway street, due to planning policy and zoning, is now a very busy thoroughfare and mainly a main sort of commercial part of the town at the moment. I've submitted a map to the council there which indicates the commercial properties and the signage located in and around the site. The photographs that the planners uploaded earlier on do not truly reflect the site context. And if the planners, if the committee would like to refer to the photographs that I submitted, which show the McDonald's building and associated signage along Railway Street, you will see that the applicant signage is very minor in comparison. And really, whenever you take the context of the street, the signage are very simple. They're modest and in scale, and they really do not detract from the area. The owner of the site is Pat Kirk Limited, so he has a strong association with the site. The applicant leases the site, so both parties have a strong interest in that site and are really trying to put some signage to advertise their businesses in the town centre so that people know where they are. I did submit some photographs there showing commercial signage on gable properties in and around the house, which show signage which are not related to the sites. But in this instance, the Pat Kirk and John McHugh have a strong connection to the site. They have other locations within the town, and to say that they should only have signage on one site and not the other would seem very strange. You know, if you have a couple of shops or a couple of businesses, then you should be entitled to have signage at both locations. So I think that should be taken into consideration as well. The planners indicate that the signage did not respect the amenity. The signage is not connected to the dwelling. It's located on the fence away from the dwelling. So we're not actually detracting from the dwelling in any shape or form. So I think that's really our proposal. I'd like you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir. Members, any questions for the agent? Go ahead there, Councillor Maguire.
Chair, two. Number one, in Mr. Martin's view, the sign is on that yard that came before us here for storage of the gas. for the business that's 30 metres down the road. In his view, that's for sale, it's been retailed out. So, in his view, is that not a commercial? Is it not on a fence of a commercial premises? In his view, number one. And number two, could he share the photos onto WebEx, or is there any way of doing that?
Do you want to come back in there, sir?
Right. Can you hear me?
Could we have the photos up of the commercial premises, please?
I can't load them. The planner and committee, they were submitted to the planners. I thought you would have them on your slides.
Members, just bear with us, we're going to try and sort this out.
Okay. You're absolutely correct. The yard has got commercial approval for the storage of gas canisters, and the signage is located within the commercial premises, located in a commercial part of the town. So I think from that point of view that they would be relevant and appropriate to the location.
Malachi, could you possibly ask Suzanne if she could upload the photographs, or yourself maybe upload them, please?
Chair, yeah, just give us a second. We're going to try and sort the photos. Thanks.
Just bear with us, members. Do you want to come in, Councillor Gallagher? Yeah, go ahead.
That's a question for Mr. Martin. No, you've heard from the objector there about the sign and the size of the sign and all the rest, and this is a very commercial and economic gateway, and from the outer businesses in the town, they would take us right up onto the square and into what we would normally call the heart of the town. And there's currently a scheme, that's taking place within commercial premises in the town and shop fronts and commercial premises. Would you, or would the applicant, if they did get approval for this, would you have the opportunity to apply for grants that might make this like a positive site for local residents that could add to the economic value? And I've sat in many meetings where council has been trying hard to draw in business into the centre of the town that goes no further than the outer town shopping such. But the question being, would you be at a later date looking to maybe develop the site and make it more economically visual?
That would be a question for the applicant. At the moment, it's used for gas canisters in connection with his business. Certainly, if there was grants available to improve the signage or alter it, then I'm sure that would be a possibility.
Is there any more questions for the? Okay, I think we have the photos up there now.
Yeah. That's a Google image dated 2009, which shows various signs attached to the fence. So, it's a part of the town, and anyone that's local will know that there's always been sort of signage on this location. Scrolling on down there, you'll see the map. The areas hatched blue are now the commercial businesses in that area of the town, and the domestic properties are sort of being minimised now as the town has developed. And carrying on down. This is a contextual photo now looking up Railway Street, showing the development adjacent which is McDonald's and their totem pole sign in relation to, and you can just about see the sign, the applicant sign against the gable there. So, you know, in the overall scheme of things, this is a very minor insertion into the streetscape. Other commercial signs in and without the town that are related to businesses at other locations in the town. You know, so it's the precedence for that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Mullen, you have a question for the agent?
Just a follow-up question from that. If it is just around the determination of whether it's the same as the other areas and the venues that it's in, being that they're a commercial premises and they're using their space to advertise, is that space that is in the application, is that for commercial use or storage use?
It's mainly for storage. The site has been approved for the storage of gas canisters in connection with McHugh's business. So the site is accessed every day by McHugh's employees to collect and store the gas canisters.
Yeah, so it's storage.
So it's not like a commercial, you know, it's in the commercial heart of the town, and it's connected to the commercial business and viability of McHugh's.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the floor? Can I ask Malachy, please, to any question from Malachy? Suzanne, I wonder, could you come in maybe and clarify something for the members there, really, on the actual history of the site, because there's a lot of talk about storage and other things, and we'd like some clarity on that, please.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to clarify. Yes, some members will recall that back in February 2020, there was a planned application approved on the site for the retention of the yard for the commercial storage of gas canisters, and that's referred to in Section 8 in your packs. And obviously the business associated with that is further up the street, is what Malachy has mentioned. So really, just in terms of clarification here, members, we're looking solely at the advertising on the actual signage, the scale and the location of the signage, which we have considered amounts to cluttering, given, you know, the significant signage already along that street. And what Malachy's pointed out as well is clearly that, you know, the existing business off the street is more than adequately provided for in terms of signage. So we're not looking at there's nothing we can do in terms of today. I mean, I know the objector was talking there about the ongoing use of the site. That is approved, and we are looking solely today at the advertising and the current recommendation to refuse on that.
Thank you for that, Suzanne. Any questions from Malachy now? Councillor Maguire.
Chair, what I'm looking at here is a directional signage as indicated by the arrows, pointing to 30 metres over on the railing of the yard. There's been signs there, at least we know, from 2009. In Malachy's report, the omission of the McDonald's sign way up into the skyline. And if I read AD1, it respects amenity when assessed in the context of the general characteristics of the locality. I mean, you know, a couple of yards, you know, not a couple of hundred yards, a couple of yards from it, we have the McDonald's sign. And in point 2 of AD1, it does not prejudice public safety, which well, obviously that's not a point, but that's the two principles of AD1. So in my view, it meets both. So on that, Chair, if there's no more questions, I'd like to propose we do not accept the officer's recommendation to refuse the application.
You just bear with us here. Councillor Maguire will have Councillor Gallagher wishes to speak on the matter.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I was going to ask a question. Just was any material consideration given to the fact that we've currently been undergoing a pandemic for the last 14, 15 months, and a lot of businesses within the Strabane town have suffered badly at that. We're in and we're trying to get into a position of recovery, and if businesses are feeling that the signs and the likes can help them in that recovery, that I think that possibly we could give material consideration to that fact. But I was wondering what Malky's consideration was.
Malky, would you like to come in that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as outlined in the case officer report, our primary consideration in terms of material considerations is the impact on visual amenity and public safety. Yeah, we would, in the round, we would consider issues in terms of impacts on businesses in all planning cases that but the primary material considerations in this application is visual amenity and road safety. As outlined, we're aware of the planning history of the site. There's no history of advertisements at the site. We have considered a lot of the issues raised by Mr. Merton in our case officer report in terms of history. There is legislative allowance for deemed consent for applications that have been there for more than 7 years, as long as it hasn't changed character. But we've assessed that this wouldn't be the case in this application. Thank you, Chair.
Right, Councillor Maguire, do you want to comment on what you're saying, sir?
Well, made the proposal, Chair. The reason it's a directional signage. Sorry. It's a directional signage which we see, kind of everywhere. And again, if I go back to AD1 and indeed AD2 of PPS 17, it meets both criteria, Chair. So I don't see no issues with it. And on that basis, I propose that we do not accept the officer's recommendation to refuse.
Can I have a seconder for that, please? Okay, so what we're proposing is that we overturn the officer's decision. Can I have, are we all in agreement on that? Okay, can we have the word of for his vote? All those in favour, please. All those against? Okay, the decision is overturned. It's a vote of 9-1. Thank you. Okay, members, we're going to move on to item 8. Item 8 is LA 1120200570, and Malik is going to take us through that again. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Item 8, LA 1120200507 is an outline application for a site for dwelling and garage that lands approximately 80 metres south of 21 Bigwood Road, Ardmore, Derry, and the recommendation is to refuse. The application is located just to the south of the Ardmore village, as shown in this attached OS site location map, as outlined in red. And this overhead ortho image of the site will give you a general idea of the characteristics of the existing site. It's a roadside agricultural field, with the traditional hedge rows on all boundaries other than the western boundary. And at the southern boundary, there's fairly heavy vegetation and a water course. In terms of policy context, the relevant policies in relation to this application is our Derry Area Plan, the SPPS, PPS 21, PPS 3 and PPS 2 in terms of natural heritage impacts. In terms of PPS 21, the applicant has put forward a case under CTY 1 that the site should be considered as an infill site. PPS 8 sets out the policy consideration that should be refused for building which creates or adds to urban development. It sets out an exception permitted for a small gap site sufficient only to accommodate up to a maximum of 2 houses within an ROA substantial built-up frontage. Just for the purposes of the report, the substantial built-up frontage includes a line of 3 or more buildings along a road frontage without accompanying development to the rear. Therefore, in such cases, there are 2 elements to consider as a substantial and potentially built-up frontage, and does a small gap site sufficiently to accommodate up to maximum of 2 houses exist. The case put forward in this recommendation that the answer is no to both of the above. In terms of site context, you'll see in the image on the left-hand side, there are a number of distinct areas of bulk development in the locality. The application site is in red in the centre here, and then there's 2 areas that are referred to in the case officer's report as Area 1 and Area 2. Area 1 is to the north of the site, where there is a number of properties. There's a fairly clearly defined ribbon of development of 3 properties with 1 to the rear at the very north of Area 1. And there's also been some non-residential buildings which have emerged in recent years as also, which when read as one out in sight and visiting Bigwood Road could be read as one built up area. Then you to south of that you have the site as outlined in red. Then you have a further gap between the site and the next area of built up, which is a single dwelling known as Area 2. So Area 1 to north of the site lies immediately south of the Area 1 as a roadside frontage. To the south of this is Area 2, which is the next built up development on the side of the Bigwood Road. There's a gap of approximately 160 metres between the built up areas 1 and 2. In addition to this gap of 160 metres, there's also a visual buffer in the form of vegetation to the immediate south of the site, and the gap area between the site and Area 2, you'll see in contextual photographs that are on here. So this photograph here is taken from just outside the house at Area 2 here, approximately where my cursor is now, looking north towards our moor and towards the site. As you'll see from the, it's pretty clear that you can see the house within Area 2 is pretty visually prominent on Bigwood Road. Then you have the gap site here, which is vegetated. There's some old shipping containers, etc. in it. And then you have the vegetated area with a watercourse. You can't see the site from the location where this photograph was taken because of the vegetation. So the photograph will be just lies to the north of that treed area and behind it. In this site, this photograph is taken approximately from this location in the cursor, just at the southern portion of Area 1, looking south away from Ardmore Village down the Bigwood Road. And you'll see that the site is here, is this rising land here, where the cursor is, where that red line is pointing up at the back of this field. The frontage here, the hedgerow and the frontage, and what I refer to in the report as a visual buffer. Here, this mature vegetation on the southern part of the site would be coterminous with this gap area between there and Area 2. And as you'll see from the photograph, you cannot see the house at Area 2 from looking south towards the site from Area 1. So there's our contention that they're not visually linked to built up areas. Therefore, having considered above, we do not believe it represents a small gap site sufficient only to accommodate up to a maximum of 2 houses. There's no substantial and continuous built up frontage at this location. is that there's a gap of 160 metres between the built-up area to the north and the next to the south. 160 metres is not considered a small gap, and based on local character, it would be our opinion that it would be possible to have more than 2 dwellings between the areas of built form and areas 1 and 2. It's our opinion that approving a dwelling at this location would add to an existing urban development at area 1, as there still would be a visual gap between the site and area 2. In terms of other policy consideration, there's no objections in relation to integration on the site, given the backdrop of the southern boundary and mature vegetation. Access can be achievable through normal outline conditions as advised by DFA. Sewage disposal is acceptable, and EHD are satisfied with that. In terms of impacts on natural heritage, we have consulted shared environmental services, as the existing watercourse on the site has a hydrological link to the River Faughan and tributaries SAC. We've considered and weighed up the draft appropriate assessment in our report, and have accepted the findings of SAS that of the stage 1 HRA, that there be no adverse effect on the River Faughan, provided a 10-metre buffer zone is applied between any development and the watercourse at the south of the site. And they've also recommended a 10-metre buffer zone in respect of any construction or pollution prevention during any site works on the site. So effectively, that's 10 metres between the watercourse, i.e. the southern boundary, should be left with no development also, which could be also factored into the size of the gap as well. You know. So overall, we've considered the case under CTY 1 in terms of CTY 8. We believe that this isn't a small gap site, and there isn't a substantially built up frontage at this location. And we believe that if a dwelling is approved here, it would add to urban development, primarily in relation to the area 1 and set out in the case officer's report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malachy. We have one speaker on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Mark Lusby. So would you like to speak?
Yes, hopefully you can pick up my voice on the microphone.
Yes, fine,
Chair?
sir.
Great. Thank you to the chair and members of the committee for giving me the 5 minutes to just comment on the application. My family have been embedded in the Ardmore community for 3 generations and continue to live and farm off the Big Wood Road. The end of the Big Wood Road closest to Ardmore has changed in character. Traditionally, it was open fields. There were no real farm holdings, just open fields belonging to holdings further up the Big Wood Road and the Ballybogey Road. But in the last 10 years, that character has changed dramatically. And that's recognised in the officer's report, where it describes the immediate area around the site as one of largely of private, individual, new and existing buildings. The key issue the officers seem to have is how continuous the built-up frontage is, and how big the gap site is. Now, in the report, they said that Area 1 fulfills the policy. Although there is a wee bit of misinterpretation in there. It describes Area 1 as residential and non-residential, and that has an implication further on. So we accept and agree with the planning officer's definition that Area 1 fulfills the policy. The issue seems to be about Area 2 and its connectedness to Area 1. In the layout image, figure 3, the officers, for some reason, have not respected the boundary of the property of 23 Bigwood Road. My family live there, so we know the owners of the property, and their property extends, the curtilage of their dwelling house extends right north to the boundary of my site. And you know, the reason for discounting the area in between and therefore widening the gap to 160 meters is as unreasonable as the fact that they've included the lawn at the northern side of the dwelling. The dwelling in Area 2 is intimately connected and accessed directly into what they describe as a rough, hard area of hard standing and storage. So our argument is that the gap is actually only 85 meters and not the 160 meters as stated in the report as being the opinion of the officers, because they have been generous with defining the gap, and they have excluded a large part of the curtilage of the property in Area 2, number 23, Bigwood Road. The other, and sorry, just to support that, we sent in a late Google image, which looks from the Bigwood Road towards property 3, and you can see the site is got an access gate directly into the property number 23, and that the area is used as a storage area as much as by the property number 23, as much as they use the front garden and the side gardens, which haven't been included in the gap area. So the key point is that the gap site is a modest gap site. It's only 85 meters, and it's between Area 1, which is entirely residential, and Area 2, which has been minimized in the opinion of the officers. The other issue that they raise is a lack of visual continuity. And this is the surprising thing. The photographs in the report that they have taken, one taken at the corner of property, a property in Area 1, house, a dwelling house number 21, Bigwood Road. They say that you can't see Area 2, the dwelling house in Area 2. And the reason is because they've gone to the middle of Area 1 and taken the photograph. If they proceeded up the Bigwood Road to the end, the southern end of Area 1, you can see at the edge of my site, you can clearly see the dwelling house. And when you're in my site, you know, halfway up the hill, you can see the dwelling house. So the idea that you can't see from Area 2 the corner of the bottom end of area, the southern end of Area 1, the area that is built up, and vice versa, is incorrect. Now,
Excuse me, sorry, Mr. Lusby, your 5 minutes speaking rights are up.
Oh, can I just then conclude then? Just one point of conclusion.
Yes, sir. Just go ahead and finish off, please.
Okay. Some members may know me as a heritage activist, championing built heritage and natural heritage issues. So I'd be the last person to come to this council and ask for planning permission to erode the rural character of the Ardmore area, and it's based on two assumptions that are wrong in the report. One is that that I'm going to remove the boundary, the natural hawthorn boundary along the road, and replace it with a ranch type fence. I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be lifting the whole hedge and moving it back to provide the sight lines and retaining that natural hedge. And the other thing that they said in the report that's wrong is that they assume that the stream and the mature trees on both sides of the stream are not in my property, when in fact they are on my property. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions from the floor? Go ahead, Keith.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in.
Just to query here, thanks for your comments there and relation to your response here on it. Just querying here in relation to this here, I'm not as familiar with that part of the country, to be fair, but you're confirming here that the dwelling at number 23, that ground that marches up onto your boundary there is all part of the 23 dwelling, and it's all connected into that dwelling there in area 2 and the blue area there on the planner's map. And as well as that, you know, it doesn't just when I'm looking at that and looking at a wider map and taking a look at other images here, it seems to be more, it's not, as you stated, it's not just, as I would look at it, just general farmland, as in other areas such as my own area. There seems to be a mixture and build-up of things. Can you just comment on what is on the opposite side of the road from area 2? You know, I'll ask you a couple of wee questions and then you can just come back to me. You know, because that seems to be tying in with different. I'm not content that it is just general countryside there, that it's just going to be a house slap bang in the middle of countryside. I think there's a differential in what's in that area and further along the road, having followed along on the maps. And just a comment there as well, there is a previous application on that site, but I'm just wondering, was there any connection to yourselves? I know that's a long time ago. There seemed to be a previous potential for farm dwelling on this site. Is it 91? But that may well before that parcel of ground came into your ownership. Just to comment on that. And no, just as I say, if that's tying in then that's not, and I would, to be fair, I would be more minded to agree if you're confirming that section of ground is in the ownership of 23. Whenever the section on the upper side in the yellow box there, where isn't there horses in that section there, that there are animals in that there, and that has been incorporated into an area, but yet this rough ground or whatever it is technically for storage or whatever it is there is not been incorporated, not given the same. Two bits aren't been treated like for like. Would that be fair comment in your opinion, seeing as you're on the ground?
Yeah, that would be the main issue that we'd have. That, you know, the dwelling house, the dwelling house is connected by a large side gate into what is that rough area. On the opposite side of the road, the opposite 23 is a builder's yard, which isn't directly connected with the ownership of the properties on the upper side. We were just, you know, just concentrating on the upper side of the road being a largely continuous development of non-agricultural holdings, mainly private existing and new dwellings. In regards to the previous, there's a mention in the report of a previous application. It is before my time. It's my mother who left me this land. She and my father had applied for a retirement bungalow, and that was approved, which they didn't take up because they moved to Greencastle, and my brother took over the farm. You know, it's before my time. I'm not really that au fait with the status of that or the significance of that, but it shows, I suppose, that, you know, that this was considered infill sites, you know, along this road were not considered ribbon development or significantly eroding the agricultural character of this particular strip of land from area 1 to area 2.
Thank you, Chair. No, just thanks for that. It's just confirming. Say, if you're sitting with, I know that the builder, it's a builder's yard now. As you said, that it's on the opposite side, but it's not. It's not just a greenfield site. It's no. There's a mixture of as I had sort of surmised there, thought on it there. It's not just a mixture. It's not just, you know, a definite boundary between dwelling houses and the countryside. There, you've got a mixed usage out there, so it is tying in. No, thanks very much for that.
Any more questions for the Mr. Lusby? Can I ask Malachi, please, just to, any questions for Malachi? Sorry, Alderman McClintock.
Thanks, Chair. Malachi, just, I suppose I'm not content, I suppose the best way to put it, with the comment that it's clearly defined that Area 1 is a ribbon of development. I know you use in the report the word a backland. It doesn't appear to me to be a ribbon of development. And I suppose there are two questions, basically. You've said that Area 2 is not visually linked. Is this really because of the vegetation? In some way, is the application penalised because there's this vegetation to the side of it? And the second one is just, would you clarify for me, in the bottom left-hand corner of Area 1, I suppose that's the southwest corner, what's that white marking on that corner of the green shape? You maybe told us that, but I'm afraid I might have missed it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Alderman. Yeah, well, I'll start with the last one there, is that the area in white appears to be like a stibbles that was originally constructed as unauthorised development, but wasn't subject to an enforcement appeal, and was subsequently been regularised through an enforcement appeal. So I think it's described as a non-residential buildings within the case officer report. In terms of Area 1, we're describing it as a ribbon of development. I'm describing it as a ribbon of development in the context of CTY 8, where you can have buildings fronting onto in a continuous form along the road. So you have three clearly ones front on the road. There's an artery onto the backland, but there's three clear ones here, and we also consider, because of the visual connection between this white building and the access area that comes down to the Bigwood Road and the accesses of these residentials and the frontage, that could be considered as a ribbon of development that's clearly visually linked when viewed from the Bigwood Road. Sorry, there's a further question there.
Yes, Malky, it was
it.
just about the vegetation
Yes.
On the site.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, well, again, when we're assessed under CTY 8 within the policy context, talking about a continuously built up frontage and assessing it, we're assessing whether there's a ribbon or a continuously built up, there has to be a visual link between the areas to establish a ribbon of development. So what we're saying there is that, not saying it's penalised, we're just saying it's factually from our observations on the ground that there's a vegetation along that ground, which means that you can't visually link those on site or settlers out site. And I think Mr. Osby's point in relation to where the location of the photograph. But I did travel up and down the Bigwood Road, and from several viewpoints, I could not visually link this area with this area, mainly due to the vegetation present on the day that I visit the site.
Councillor Gallagher, you have a question for Malachi?
I just have one, Chair. Just to see when we look at areas 1 and 2, and then with the site, was there a specific reason why Area 2 was not expanded out to the actual boundaries of the gap site? Because there is other construction on the area between Area 2 and the gap site. So if the structure or whatever is in Area 2, why was it not enclosed in Area 2 if it's under the same ownership?
Well, I mean, it was a visual inspection, Councillor Yar, on the day of the site visit. We didn't take into account no ownership of the land. So we took a visual inspection and looked at the characteristics of the area. The visual inspection, in my mind, showed that there was a clear residential curtilage outlined at Area 2 associated with number 23. There's no buildings as such between the blue area and the site. Yes, there's an area of hard standing that seemed to be an ad hoc area of storage with vegetation, but there was no evidence that that was residential storage to my mind on the day. So I could just make my observations on site that day, and there was no suggestion that that area between the blue and red was in any way associated with the residential property at number 23. Thank you.
Can I just come in there myself? Area 2 there, Malachi, if that was to be extended out to the red mark where the gap starts, could that be classed as Area 2's garden? Actually, it was their land, and would that reduce the area to, as the applicant states, 85 metres? And would that be within the constraints of 2 houses being built within a linear development?
In my mind, in assessing the policy, when we're looking at a small gap and the continuously built up frontage, the continuously built up frontage, to my mind, has to be a visual entity. So I think I've put out in the report that I don't think Area 1 is linked with Area 2, regardless even if that had been a garden. There's no visual linkage between the 2 built up areas. Visiting the site. Again, there's no bulk development. The actual bulk development in Area 2 is at the southern location. And again, if you took the site and the area between site and Area 2, there is to my mind, it's a gap that would go beyond the description of a small gap. It would be a gap that could accommodate more than 2 dwellings based on the local context of that area. You're probably, if you look at the area, I think it could, in terms of residential property, setting aside that this is non-residential, these here, 3 here, residential, quite small plots, and again, it's quite a small plot. What we could take into account is that, which I don't agree with. I don't think it is a residential plot, but if it had been a bigger plot, that may have changed the character of the area. But there was nothing to my mind, if I'm viewing the site, that area was a part of the residential curtilage of this number 23.
Thank you, Malachi. Any more questions to Malachi? Yeah, go ahead, please, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I'm still in a bit of confusion around the assessment that's in the case officer's report, what I'm hearing. And I suppose it goes back to the perennial problem that we have with ribbon development and the assessment of ribbon development. But my issue is, as I've read through the report, it's consistently saying there's no visual linkage between the various separate areas that have been identified on the photographs. So I don't understand how we can conclude there's going to be ribbon development if there isn't the visual linkage that is specified within the policy. And I'm kind of caught betwixt and between now, because if there's no visual linkage, then how are we coming to a conclusion where the application has been turned down on ribbon development? And that's where I'm kind of lost in the consideration of this. Maybe if somebody could kind of come in and clarify that again for me.
You want to come in on that?
Yeah, it just goes back to the basics of the discussions we would have regarding the LDP in terms of the interpretation of infill, and the officers are explaining the fact that we need a continuous build-up of buildings along a frontage. If there is no connection between them and the gap is so large, then that does not mean that there's a potential for an infill. Suppose that's why there is that point that's been made about no visual linkage, because of the length of gap that exists. It has to be literally, within an area that you've got, a line and then a gap and then another line. And what the officers are obviously clearly trying to explain, that sort of suburban type development along the frontage doesn't exist the whole way along with a gap in the middle or at the end or whatever. So that's why they're referring to the visual entity, and that those issues in regard to what you can see on the ground are important. and also the nature of the buildings and where they exist and what relationship and context they have with the frontage. So that's what needs to be taken into account. It's about literally finding a gap in an already built up area that has that pattern of development that basically the rural character is already eroded, and that this is just something filling in at the end, I suppose. But that would be just me trying to encapsulate the policy again. But maybe Malik, you might want to come in and confirm.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, Maura. But I suppose if you look at the amplification of PPS 8, at paragraph 5.34, talks about in the countryside that there's gaps and visual gaps that sort of contribute to the rural character of the area. So we're saying that that sometimes they're important in terms of the rural character. They have these visual gaps, and if we add to existing built up areas, that they may close these visual gaps and erode the countryside. And I think in this case that if we approved, or sorry, as officers, if we recommended approval of this particular site, it would add the existing line of development here. So you'd have a ribbon, and then you'd have perhaps another couple of sites here as well. So you have a ribbon extending the whole way from area 1 to area 2. And when there is no actual visual linkage between those two areas, they don't read together. Right inside it doesn't read as a small gap. They read as you travel along both north and south. It reads that there's you have area 1, you notice a house, then you drive up, there's a couple of fields, then you have area 2. And again, if you look north between the site and Ardmore, on the site location map, there's a similar situation. So we have to take that into account when assessing rural character.
Councillor Gallagher.
Just.
You don't have to fight about it.
All right. Now, just maybe.
Yeah, I hear what's being said, but again, it goes back to the point, why was the blue line put around? We have been here before, and we have accepted that land adjacent to a property, a domestic property, which was forested, was considered frontage. And I know that the officers maybe dissented from that opinion, but that was the opinion of the committee. And we're here again now. We're looking at a domestic property with the site of that property extends towards the area outlined in red, and that I think we do have to consider that in the round, because that is part of that property and it forms part of that frontage. And I think just in terms of the precedent, as far as the committee has set, we have to look at it in that fashion, not in the narrow way where the blue line is presented on the overhead there. That's my take on it. It's not so much a question, Chair, it's just reflecting back to a previous situation where I can recall a similar situation where that wooded area in adjacent to a property was considered as frontage.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Gallagher, please.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise if I was trying to chair there and didn't answer. I just to see on figure 4 that we have, and it's saying it's looking north, and it's looking up to area 1, and there's no visual. And I'm looking at that photo. I'm not trying to be a detective or anything, but I noticed that we're actually 25, maybe 30 yards further south than the actual property of 23. And when you look at that fence that's round 23 runs for a query. But if we had took possibly a photograph 25 yards the other side, as for 25 yards back, I'm querying, and you can see in the distance the hawthorn hedge, and I think the applicant was saying that may possibly be moved back. That if that was the case, then would there possibly be a clear visual link from area 2 to area 1?
Chair, can I just?
Sure.
Oh, sorry. just in terms of clarity, just Chair, I think it's important. I mean, officers have used the screen in the areas to try to help members assess the proposal. Okay, the policy is very clear. It's a small gap in an already visually linked line of buildings. Malachi's very clearly today presented that I mean, the case officer's been out in sight. He's also been out in sight that we feel the gap is too large. It's going to set a precedent for further development and more gap sites along the road. It's something we really don't want to get to in terms of build up. And you know, I think the facts have been clearly put out on behalf of the officers today. I appreciate members' view on these cases, but we're purely looking at the policy, and it is a large site. Any approval here is going to create ribbon and build up, but officers can only advise you of the recommendation, and that's what we're trying to do here and trying to help you. And I appreciate it's difficult when you're not actually on site. I appreciate that, possibly, but we're just trying to provide some clarification, help for you in making your decision on that. Thanks.
Right, can I just say, look, I sort of tend to agree with the statement from Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Kelly. We have set a precedence in the past, and if we were to go to take area 2 and extend it on out to the boundary, that would reduce the infill gap to approximately, according to the applicant, to 85 metres, I believe he said. So we need to take these into considerations. Have we any proposals from the floor? But with a second, members, Maura wants to clarify something.
Sorry, members, I just want to clarify something that was raised in regard to the discussion there about the planning history on the site. You've probably looked at the actual report there, and it'll indicate it was a retirement home, which it wasn't approved as an infill. That was a retirement home for the farm owner, I would imagine, at the time, and for them to actually vacate the farm building and allow the sun access, and that wasn't taken up, so that's expired. So this is, you know, an assessment of the current policy in terms of infill. And I suppose I would say that our professional judgment in terms of the interpretation of the infill policy remains the same, a material of previous potential decisions that have been made by the council. You know, we're obviously here to try and give our advice in terms of the interpretation of that, and it remains the same. It's no different because the policy has not been changed, nor have we had any further guidance to give us any indication that we shouldn't be applying that. So just to remind members, that's our position. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity, Maura. Any more speakers on the floor? Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. Just wanted to ask: is there any weight given to the fact there that it is, isn't it, the natural heritage and flood risk? You know, they're requesting that any potential development is cited as at least 10 metres away from a water course, and then we have the Environmental Health Service are advising that the proposed dwelling should be situated as far away as is practical from the unconnected buildings due to its horses, I believe, as in that stables is in that section in there. And I notice further down the road we shake there, you have us at City of Derry Equestrian Centre as well. So it's is there any bearing given in that mind whereby there's advice from statutory agencies, you know, to keep your dwelling further away, that such a gap is then mitigated to a certain extent, or does that be considered at all?
Or do you want to come in on that there, maybe?
Just the fact that the citing of, you know, because we've obviously highlighted the gap in the principle of this, we have to get over that first before we consider the siting of a dwelling on the site then. I suppose that's after we consider the interpretation of the policy and whether it passes the infill test. So, I mean, that would be my view. I wonder, maybe Malachy, would you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you can overcome the infill and determined as unful will be a consideration then in terms of any siting condition that we attach an outline where you locate it within the property. So it's it would be something to consider in a further application. I think the site itself, when you view it from the road and from the outside, it reads as one site. I don't think the location within it will still read with Area 1 in my opinion. No matter where it is located within the actual site. Our issue is more that we believe that this is a gap here in connection with the site and that area. And as Councillor Gallagher pointed out in his observations, the wrench fence is actually that blue line there. So that's one of the reasons I concluded that was the residential curtilage from the day in the site, from the site visit. So the second wrench fence on image 4,
Any other questions? Okay.
Can I come in? Could I just respond to a couple of those points, just very quickly?
Unfortunately not, sir. I'm afraid protocol
Okay.
only allows you 5 minutes to speak.
I'll just say that some of the errors that I raised.
No, sir, I'm afraid I can't allow you to
Okay.
speak, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair.
Okay, we're going to vote now on to accept the officer's recommendation. All those in favour? We need a sorry. My apologies. The proposal is that we accept the officer's recommendation. What? Okay, my apologies again. Can I have a proposal from the floor, please? Thank you, Councillor Gallagher.
Chair, I propose that we overturn the recommendation and we regard this as unful. Chair.
You, Councillor. Can we have a seconder, please? Councillor Minnie. Could you possibly state the reasons, Councillor Gallagher, please?
I'll have to find them now. Chair, we've been here before on a number of occasions, and its interpretation of what's unful and not. I believe that consideration should be given to the fact that, one, that Site 2 should be extended out to the boundaries of the gap site, and then that would be approximately 85 metres. Therefore, I think that this qualifies as unful. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Gallagher. Can we have a... Sorry, Councillor Minnie, go ahead.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'm happy to second that. I think on the basis of the first refusal, I would probably say that Mr. Losby, the applicant, has already outlined that his family has been there for 3 generations. I think that would probably overcome the reason that there's no overriding reason. I think his family's been there. There's roots in the community for the last 3 generations. I don't know how far it goes back, but I'm sure it's for some years. And secondly, just to add on to Councillor Gallagher's reason for number 2, I would say obviously as well, I think there is an erosion of the rural character from those photographs I've seen, although I haven't had the benefit of a site visit or been out there. But it looks like there is sort of an erosion. If you look down from the figure 3, you can see area 1, area 2, and there seems to be construction on the other side of the road. And it does seem to me that, based on what Councillor Gallagher has said, the infill is probably sufficient, and maybe the proposed development may actually add to the character there rather than take away from the rural character there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Minnie. So we have a proposal to overturn the decision on the officers have made to refuse. Can we have a show of hands, please? All those support the proposal? Thank you, members. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you. Okay, members, to move on to open for information, we have items 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. Do the members wish to bring any points up on those items, or shall we move on? Sorry, Councillor Gallagher, sorry, Councillor Jackson, please.
Thanks, Chair. I wish to speak on item 9. I know we touched on this at full council, and it was brought up at our last meeting in respect to the recent PAC decision, the overturn the decision of council, and we appreciate the response that was circulated to another member of council in respect to it. One of the things that we had requested at full council was different options that are available to us as a council going forward. So I just wouldn't mind to have a bit more information in respect to that and the different options related to the committee in terms of what options are available to us in terms of moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, could you possibly come in on that, please?
So really, members, the only option for challenging a decision of the PAC is in relation to a judicial review if the decision of the PAC is lawful or not. So following on from the meeting at council, where, as you know, it was proposed that we get some independent assessment of the PAC. That's something which is in train at the minute, and hopefully a report will come back in relation to that to the next planning committee.
You feel so we'll have a hopefully something back for the next meeting, yeah? Does that answer your question?
It does in a way, but just picking up from the first part of Philip's question around one of the options available to us, or probably the only option, is a judicial review. Is there time constraints there with judicial review, and are we time enough to have the report brought back to next month's committee?
Time, the time limit's 3 months for a judicial review from the date on which the decision was issued.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Must admit, I don't have the date on which the decision was issued just in front of me, but certainly we will have that date noted down, and we will be keeping an eye on it.
And just wants to come in here on this one?
Sorry,
No,
the date's the 30th of April that the decision was handed down, so.
So it'd be the 30th of July. So the committee meeting's on the 7th, 6th, 7th, thereabouts. So we'll have a report in. I mean, if there is anything in relation to that, members, yeah, maybe filter a wee bit further in relation to that if we go into confidential, if that's okay.
Okay, any other questions on the items? All right, can we move into confidential, please? Is that closed down, Paul? Yeah. Can I somebody propose moving to confidential, please?